Chapter 189. While Yun Yang was still hurling insults, a gust of wind had begun to blow in Tiantang City. Did you know? I heard young Master Yun cursing just now. These fellows want young Master Yun to bring them to the brothel when they come. What a bunch of lechers, and they're all generals. What the hell are they? Which country are they from? What a strange way to put it. Of course it's Dongxian de Yuan Tianzi. No wonder they come to us for war every year. Snatching women? We can't let them succeed no matter what. Once they come here, our families, F***CK. Your father shall enlist in the army and kill these bastards. Those with money, those with power, those with manpower. We can't let these lechers come here. Young Master Yun has said that they can do anything. It's not easy for young Master Yun to argue with so many people and refuse to bring them to the brothel no matter what. Those people are forcing young Master Yun. Young Master Yun must be feeling bitter. Young Master Yun, it's really not easy. Young Master Yun is righteous and benevolent. What he has done is commendable. Even if it's a brothel, it belongs to Yutong. How can we let these foreigners go as they please? No way. Young Master Yun's loyal heart protects the prostitute. He is righteous, open and above board, chivalrous, courageous and courageous. You're absolutely right. They watched as Yun Yang fought with increasing vigor, spittle flying everywhere as he exchanged insults with the generals. His words were as sharp as a knife, infuriating the generals so much that their mouths were contorted and their eyes were slanted. They were tongue-tied, unable to defend themselves. This was clearly a huge slander. Any one of us is a great general of a country, and we have fought in the East and the West. We are invincible and have made outstanding contributions. How did we become a group of perverts in this bastard's mouth? Han Sanha held his forehead with one hand, truly troubled by the situation. How could this bastard be so unruly? He had actually thrown such a tantrum at a time like this without a care for his dignity. He had even dared to say anything. This was too martial. The dark-skinned youth beside him came over and said in a low voice, "He's inciting the people." Han Sanha was shocked when he heard the words. He turned his head and looked around. Everywhere he looked, there were people who came to listen to a few words, then turned around and left. The crowd came and went, and it was unknown how many people had already heard the quarrel here, but after they rejoined the sea of people, there were people everywhere. One could imagine what kind of storm these people would stir up. The scariest thing was that today's incident was not intentional, nor was it intentional. It was just spread by word of mouth among the commoners, and this kind of transmission efficiency was the scariest. Stop arguing, all of you. Han Sanha hollered, "What a disgrace." Actually, Han Sanha had said something similar a few times before, but the effect was limited. Even if someone wanted to listen, they would be dragged back into the fray by Yun Yang's words. However, Han Sanha's tone this time was unprecedentedly stern, shocking everyone present. The war of words came to an abrupt end. "Young Master Yun, let's just go to the residence of 9 Supremes. Let's not talk about anything else for now." Han Sanha looked at Yun Yang and said slowly, enunciating each word, "Especially the scenery along the way. We have no interest in watching it anymore." Yun Yang knew that this was the limit of Han Sanha's patience. Going too far was as bad as not going far enough. There would be another opportunity later, so there was no need to be impatient. He nodded and said readily, "That's right, Marshal Han is right. Look at all of you talking about brothels and brothels. What is this? It's Marshal Han who never mentions brothels on the surface, but people go there secretly." All the generals were furious. Who was the one who talked about brothels and brothels? Under Han Sanha's threatening gaze, however, no one dared to say anything. In their hearts, however, they had already hacked Yun Yang to death 1,000,000 times over. "This bastard, don't let him fall into my hands in the future. If he does, your father will F***CK him to death." The group continued on their journey. Han Sanha sighed inwardly. Although he was the chief military officer, he was not a politician. If he was, he would have noticed Yun Yang's intention immediately and stopped him. This kid's brain was really too flexible. However, if the quarrel today were to be spread out by Yutong's people, it would definitely cause a commotion. When word of mouth spread, the empire of Yutong's xenophobic heart would be unprecedentedly firm and unshakable. Some people could not care less about the country, the rise and fall of glory, but as long as they were human, who would not care about their parents, wives, daughters, and children? If the saying that all the generals of each country were lechers was spread, there would be countless witnesses that even the highest-ranking general went to a brothel the first thing he did when he came to Yutong. The reputations of the various countries were completely ruined just like that. Not a single drop was left untouched. Once the war broke out, the empire of Yutong would be united, and all its citizens would be soldiers. It would be a light punishment for them to rather die than surrender. Even if there was a day of defeat and the city being conquered, the only thing they would see in the end would be dead people. Han Sanhe knew that Yun Yang's act must have been premeditated even though it seemed like a coincidence. He might even have a backup plan. His ultimate goal was to use these people to stir up the empire of Yutong's people's desire to defend against the foreign enemy, achieving the goal that he had just thought of. Inciting them was not the most effective method. The most brilliant method was to make the entire country hate the foreign invaders so much that they would rather die than surrender and would rather die than be humiliated. By then, whether one was literate or not, the backbone of a country, the soul of a people, would be formed naturally. This was the fundamental way of life. Young Master Yun is indeed far-sighted and wise. Han Sanhe looked at Yun Yang, his gaze deep as they walked. His gaze was inquisitive and a little vexed. Why had he chosen such a fellow to accompany him? His feeling about this fellow was right, he was indeed a dangerous fellow, but this was too dangerous. You flatter me. Old Marshal is flattering me. Yun Yang has only spoken the truth. How can he be far-sighted? Yun Yang wore a smug look. Justice is in the hearts of men, right and wrong can't be argued. The reason is on my side, of course you people can't argue with me. Today is truly satisfying. Looking at Yun Yang's pretense of superficiality, the wariness in Han Sanhe's eyes deepened. Along the way there were already a lot of people who were looking at the troop with strange gazes. Some of them even spat on the ground angrily after the large group of people passed by. Pa! The residents of 9 Supremes. When the group saw their destination from afar, the residents of 9 Supremes, shrouded in a thick cloud of fog, the expressions of the 200 people turned grim. The legendary residents of 9 Supremes stood quietly on the other side, exuding an intimidating aura that made everyone who saw it shudder, not daring to act rashly. The rustling sound of sweeping the floor rang softly and rhythmically. The 200 generals turned towards the source of the sound and saw many soldiers in old military uniforms around the residents of 9 Supremes, each of them holding large brooms with long handles, sweeping meticulously. Their bodies were hunched, the large brooms laid flat on the ground, dragging the dust on the ground forcefully, but not a single speck of dust was stirred up. The ground was spotless. Even if one were to roll around in their snow-white clothes, they would not be stained by anything at all. There were 2 small patches of trees on the side. Each tree was tall and straight, the branches that stuck out halfway were trimmed cleanly. The dust that was swept from the ground was gathered and dumped around the roots of the trees. The faces of the soldiers who gathered here were calm and serene. It was as if being able to do this kind of work was their lifelong pursuit. Han Sanhe sighed softly. Are these the remnants of the army? Han Sanhe looked at the men in old military uniforms who were either missing an arm or an eye. However, every single one of these disabled soldiers had tidied themselves up neatly and cleanly. Even their hair was neatly arranged. The residence of 9 Supremes was very clean before the 9 Supremes lords met with mishap. However, it wasn't as clean as it is now. Yun Yang said quietly, ever since the news of the 9 Supremes lords' mishap came back, this place has become Yutong's holy land. No one or force has ever called for it, no one has ever purposely arranged it, not even once. All the cleaning work here is done spontaneously by these veterans, automatically arranging themselves to maintain everything here. There's no salary or remuneration, everything is done on their own accord. To them, their greatest wish is for the 9 Supremes lords to return. They're afraid that the 9 Supremes lords will be in a bad mood when they return to see the mess. They won't allow the holy land in their hearts to be tainted by any trash. Over time, it has become what it is now. Yun Yang's tone was solemn as he introduced, each of these people are good men who have slaughtered countless enemies in the battlefield. The residence of 9 Supremes is guarded by loyal souls, guarded by loyal hearts. The generals of various countries wore solemn expressions as they listened, watching the residents of 9 Supremes respectfully. After a while they bowed in unison, unusually solemn. Mighty Yutong, mighty 9 Supremes, warring the world, protecting the nation and its people, victorious in every battle, revered in the battlefield. You are the army's morale on all 4 sides of the battlefield. You are the army's soul among the millions of warriors. Chapter 190. Another veteran general from the Empire of Dayun sighed softly and said, the 9 Supremes are indeed the legends of a generation. The battles fought by these 9 people. I'm afraid any one of us can't fight as many battles in 3 lifetimes. No wonder Yutong calls them the guardians of the Empire. They are undefeatable and undefeated. This old man is convinced by the title of legend. I have no choice but to be convinced. All the generals nodded in silence. What he said was true. No matter how reluctant they were, they had to admit it. The battles on all four sides of the battlefield were endless, especially after the legend of the Nine Supremes had appeared. Yutong had become the world's public enemy, and since then, Yutong had been in a precarious situation. Whenever Yutong was in danger, the Nine Supremes would almost always come to their aid. Some of the Nine Supremes had even joined the battle at the same time. Even when the battle here had just ended, another request for help had arrived, and they would be thrown into a new round of battle immediately. If they had not participated in it personally, no one would know how these 9 people had done it. In spite of this, most of the generals present had led their troops to fight against the Nine Supremes. Even with the most conservative calculation, 1 battle per person, there had been 200 battles in total. Some of them had fought the Nine Supremes more than once. However, this figure alone had already surpassed the so-called battle-hardened generals by a few times. There were also those generals who had not come and those who had been killed by the Nine Supremes. There were also the battles against the grasslands and the southern border. If one were to really count the battles that the Nine Supremes had participated in, even these generals who were renowned throughout the continent and boasted of being battle-hardened were left speechless, sighing at their own inferiority. Now that they had seen the legendary residence of 9 Supremes with their own eyes, it was as if they had seen the 9 masked men in black who were like gods and demons on the battlefield. The 9 different masks, when they had appeared alone, their actual combat ability might not have been impressive. It could even be said to be weak and not enough to be a threat. However, the manifestation power of the 9 of them was impossible to guard against. In a battle, as long as any 2 of the 9 Supremes worked together and cooperated with each other, they could change the course of the battle. It was undoubtedly an ability that would strike fear and despair into any enemy. Now, these 9 people had finally disappeared. When the generals from various countries had confirmed this fact, they were relieved, but at the same time, they felt a boundless sense of regret. Han Sanha walked forward slowly. There was a clear line in front of the residence of 9 Supremes, 9 steps away from the entrance. The distance was not considered far, enough for everyone to see the residence of 9 Supremes clearly from this distance. However, this line was also the dividing line that forbade anyone from approaching. Ever since the news of the 9 Supremes' demise had spread, no one dared to cross this line. Han Sanha took a few steps forward, already very close to the dividing line. At this moment, Han Sanha suddenly felt as if countless pairs of eyes were watching him coldly. Facing such an unfriendly gaze, Han Sanha followed the source of the stare and saw that the soldiers who were cleaning around him had stopped what they were doing and straightened their backs, glaring at him menacingly. The gazes of these people were like the black feathered arrows that had already been shot, soul-stirring and soul-snatching. Han Sanha's heart raced as he stopped before the dividing line in front of the residence of 9 Supremes. The other generals also stopped at this place. However, his gaze became even more complicated. All of them had a feeling that if they were to go a little further and touch the dividing line, something extremely terrifying would happen. It was hard to say how capable the other party was or how much of a threat it could be, but the deterrence that the other party had formed was already intimidating enough that no one dared act rashly. It was not that no one dared act rashly. The youth dressed in black behind Han Sanha did not stop like Han Sanha and the others, but was about to take a step forward instead. Han Sanha extended his arm and said with a faint smile, "Being able to see the residence of 9 Supremes today is the fulfillment of this old man's wish for the past few years. As expected of the legendary residence of 9 Supremes, it's truly a blessing from heaven and earth. I'm satisfied to see such a magnificent sight. I have nothing else to ask for." With this stretch of his hand, he intentionally or unintentionally blocked the black-clothed youth who was about to move forward. However, a scrawny man dressed in black who had been standing behind the Empire of Daeun's old marshal stood up and said faintly, "It's still a great regret that we didn't manage to enter the residence of 9 Supremes after all," asked Han Sanha. The man in black was scrawny and his face was dry like the skin of a dried eggplant. His eyes were cold and sunken deep into his eye sockets, exuding an indescribable sense of eeriness. Based on his appearance, he was most likely not from the military. Yun Yang could confirm with a single glance that a military man would never have such an aura. Han Sanha and the other old marshals might not be able to stop this fellow. He might even make a move. Yun Yang's gaze turned cold, but a smirk hung at the corners of his lips. He wanted to see what this fellow was going to do. No matter what cultivation base you have, even if you're a grandmaster in your bones, You'll enter the residence of 9 Supremes standing and lie inside if you dare to do anything to the residence of 9 Supremes in front of me today. Today's trip won't be repeated. Let this lowly one enter this so-called residence of 9 Supremes on behalf of all the generals." A cold smirk hung on the scrawny man's face as he said faintly, "Let's see if this world-renowned residence of 9 Supremes still possesses the ability to intimidate the world after losing its 9 masters." Yun Yang wore a furious expression as he shouted, "What do you want to do? The residence of 9 Supremes is a sacred place. How can it be trespassed so easily? How dare that thief act so rashly?" Before his words echoed in the air, Yun Yang looked like he was about to rush over to stop the man, but a few generals came forward to stop him. "Young master, please don't be angry. We're already here. If we can't see the rumored impregnable residence of 9 Supremes with our own eyes, it'll be a lifetime regret. Let us verify it. What's the harm?" The old soldiers who were sweeping the floor came over with a smirk, but no one came forward to stop them. Instead, they looked at the people in front of them with their arms folded. One of them said coldly, "We won't stop you if you want to trespass the residence of 9 Supremes, but let me warn you first. Don't blame us for not warning you if you die inside. Trespassing the residence of 9 Supremes will only result in death and a graveless death. You can't complain." The scrawny man's expression changed slightly before he snorted coldly. Suddenly his body swayed. Then an extremely strange thing happened. It happened in front of everyone's eyes. Next to the man in black, a silhouette appeared out of thin air with a swoosh. The silhouette's attire, appearance and aura were exactly the same as the man himself. As the man in black swayed 6 times, another 6 silhouettes that looked exactly like him appeared. These 7 silhouettes stood side by side in front of the residence of 9 Supremes like septuplets. Yun Yang's gaze flickered. Shadow cloning? Could this fellow be from the Spectre sect? He had to admit that it was a good idea. The so-called shadow doppelganger secret technique was a secret technique of the spirit sect. Practitioners who cultivated this technique would be able to create many doppelgangers as their cultivation progressed. Each doppelganger could be illusory or real, possessing the strength of the main body. More importantly, the main body would be able to see everything that the doppelganger saw at the same time. Even if this cultivation method only had such an effect, it was already a rare peerless cultivation method in the world. However, this cultivation method had an even more heaven-defying effect. That was, if the main body and the doppelganger met an enemy, even if the main body had perished, as long as there was one surviving doppelganger, it could recover within a certain period of time. Furthermore, there would be no fundamental damage. It was truly powerful and mysterious. The man in black obviously knew about the residence of 9 Supremes' reputation and was already prepared to sacrifice his clone once he realized that something was amiss. However, by using this skill, logically speaking, there was indeed a very high chance that he could see what was inside the residence of 9 Supremes. The icy glint in Yun Yang's eyes flickered for a moment before returning to calmness as he watched the man in black's subsequent actions. A silhouette flashed and a clone of the man in black charged into the thick fog of the residence of 9 Supremes. Seeing that the clone had successfully entered the residence of 9 Supremes' territory, the residence of 9 Supremes did not dare to move. The fog shrouding the residence of 9 Supremes was still as thick as ever, without any ripples. The silhouette that entered was like a clay ox entering the sea without a trace. The man was baffled. He could clearly feel that his clone was already inside the residence of 9 Supremes, but he could not see anything. This kind of invisibility was different from the pure darkness where one could not even see their own fingers. All that could be seen was a thick fog. However, he did not feel any impending danger. After drifting around for a while, he did not encounter anything substantial. This was rather strange. The residence of 9 Supremes was right in front of him. His clone had been dashing around in such a huge building for a long time, but he could not even touch a single wall. He was even running in a single direction without any hindrance, yet there was no end to it either. It was truly strange. A moment later, however, the man in black's expression changed again. His clone had entered some unknown place and had lost contact with the main body. No matter how he tried to summon and control it, there was no response. However, the clone was clearly not dead. He could feel it. How could such a thing happen? The man's skinny face was filled with confusion. "What's wrong?" asked the general of De Yuan. "My clone has lost contact, but it's not dead. This is the first time I've encountered such a situation." The thin man answered in confusion and astonishment. "Since there's no danger, why don't we just send another person in to help?" The general of De Yuan was unconcerned as he thought to himself, "Is this fellow slacking off? He's afraid that the residence of 9 Supremes is in danger and unwilling to go all out. Looking at the remaining clones, the general was displeased as well. You have so many clones? Why don't you send a few more in? If only one goes in, it's inevitable that he's weak. How can he not find out with so many clones working together? He's obviously not trying his best. Chapter 191. However, after the two doppelgangers entered, they silently lost contact with each other after a short while. They lost contact even faster than the first doppelganger. This is strange, truly strange. The skinny man chuckled bitterly and said, "Do you all want to try as well?" 3 more people walked out slowly from their team. One of them said, "Brother Fei, we don't have your cloning skill. If we want to go in, we'll have to go in with our real bodies. This is a huge risk." Brother Fei furrowed his brows and said, "This realm is indeed strange. My avatar went in and didn't encounter any obstacles the entire time. Although my avatar is formless, it can still sense things in the outside world. No matter how big this mansion is, there must be a limit. How can it not encounter anything? Therefore, it's best for someone to go in with their real bodies. Now that it's so empty, it's unbearable. Even if my clone is still here, it's hard to do anything even if I have the strength and the intention." Another person said with a frown, "Since the residence of 9 Supremes has existed, no one has been able to test it successfully. All those who have barged in by force have died without exception. Are we really going to take the risk? This trip is unusually dangerous, it's not worth it." Another person stroked his beard, his expression grim. Brother Fei gritted his teeth and said, "Brother Liang, just go in. I'll have my 3 remaining clones accompany you. As long as we stay together and don't split up, I believe we'll be able to find something." He smiled and said, "Even if the residence of 9 Supremes is in danger, with my clone at the front and Brother Liang as 100%, it won't be a problem for you to escape unscathed." The one who was addressed as Brother Liang was an elder who looked to be in his 50s or 60s. He glanced at Brother Fei coldly and hesitated for a moment before saying, "If so, this old man shall go in and take a look. Let's see if I can break the rule that those who barge into the residence of 9 Supremes must die." Brother Fei did not finish his sentence, but Yun Yang's gaze still flickered. Brother Liang? 100%? Could it be the empire of Deyuan's legend, Liang Yunqi, who was known as the Dragon of Clouds? If Ling Xiaozue was a legend of this world, then this person was a legend of the empire of Deyuan. He had countless disciples under him and there were many capable people. He himself was a super expert at the 10th perfection level. It was said that even the emperor of Deyuan dynasty had to address him respectfully as Teacher Liang. Just as Yun Yang was wondering if this man was the legend of Deyuan, the 3 clones moved in unison, flying lightly into the thick fog of the residence of 9 Supremes. The body of Brother Liang also floated up as if it was weightless. He followed behind the 3 clones and entered the thick fog at the same time. The thick fog instantly closed up and the 3 clones and Brother Liang's figure disappeared. The thick fog was like a demon with its mouth wide open, swallowing the 4 of them at the same time. Although not all of the experts from the other side have entered, just that one surnamed Liang is already very much enough. Yun Yang lowered his head quietly as the light in his eyes shone brightly. His hand that was hidden in his sleeve gripped the 9 heavens dictum. The real 9 heavens dictum. Everyone was still staring at the clouds above the residence of 9 Supremes with widened eyes, waiting. Suddenly, the clouds that had been quiet and motionless rose abruptly. With a loud whoosh, it was as if a storm had suddenly swept through the thick fog. Whirlwind. The thick fog was stirred into a ball at that moment, surging and howling incessantly. The momentum was unprecedented. A patch of dark clouds gathered in midair at the same time. A moment later, the thick fog suddenly lit up. Everyone who was watching the situation at the residence of 9 Supremes felt a burning pain in their eyes. A bolt of purple lightning suddenly appeared. The lightning pillar was as thick as a person's thigh. With a loud boom it struck down. After the first bolt of purple lightning descended, more bolts of purple lightning began to appear, crisscrossing in the thick fog. In the beginning there were only a few dozen bolts, then a few hundred bolts, and then a few thousand bolts. Thunderous rumbles came again, lingering in everyone's ears. Even the ground beneath their feet trembled slightly because of it. Watching the scene unfold before their eyes, the cleaning soldiers of the residence of 9 Supremes who were watching coldly from the sidelines wore mocking expressions that they should have. How dare you small fries try to destroy the residence of the 9 Supremes lords? You're asking for death. Since you're asking for it, you deserve to die. Thunder and lightning continued to strike, its momentum lasting for a long time. Just as the power of the thunder was getting stronger, a ball of raging fire was also burning fiercely in the thick fog. There was also the wind that was originally entangled with the thick fog. The wind became stronger and stronger, and one could almost see the green wind marks in the thick fog. The wind marks seemed to have materialized as well. At this moment, a mass of blood suddenly appeared without any warning, and the thick fog instantly turned scarlet red. There was even a cry of agony. It was Brother Fage who was pinching his heart seal outside. Suddenly he paled and spat out a mouthful of blood. Then he spat out 6 mouthfuls of blood consecutively. As if he had lost all his bones, he fell limply to the ground, no longer breathing. He had already passed out. Everyone at the scene suddenly realized that his 6 doppelgangers had all perished in there. No matter how mystical the shadow cloning art was and how he could recover as long as his clones were still alive, it was not without a price. All 6 clones had perished, and Brother Fei was severely injured, his vitality severely damaged. In spite of this, the thunder and lightning did not stop. Amidst the rolling fog, a silhouette could be vaguely seen, moving and evading in the thick fog. It was obvious that Brother Liang was still holding on, resisting the combined attack of wind, thunder and fire. He's a 10th perfection expert indeed. He's the Dragon of Clouds, Liang Yunqi. To be able to hold on like this, he's amazing. Everyone else was speechless as they watched the thunder and lightning in the sky. To be able to dodge such dense thunder and lightning, and at the same time withstand the sharpness of the wind marks, the blood-red attack and the burning of the fire, this legendary expert of Dayan was indeed worthy of being called a Grandmaster, a legend of Dayan. However, this legendary expert could not rush out no matter what. He was clearly in front of him, but he was powerless. In the next moment, another cry of agony rang out from the depths of the fog. The blood-red aura suddenly blazed. Vaguely, it was the body of the Grandmaster who had leaped into the air. Suddenly, tens of thousands of lines of blood burst out. Then the sound of the wind intensified. It was unprecedentedly ferocious, almost bursting everyone's eardrums. The power of the thunder and lightning also increased by 100-fold at this moment. The raging flames also became blazing white, and the extreme flames rushed to the heavens. Boom! The last loud tremor rang out. The entire ground shook thrice. Then everything returned to silence. There was no sound at all. The blood-red color disappeared. The fire disappeared. The thunder and lightning disappeared. As the wind stopped, the clouds in the sky also returned to a state of stillness. There was only the most basic floating mist. All traces of the violence were covered by the fog. It was as if nothing had happened. However, everyone present was staring blankly at the scene, chills running down their spines. This was because everyone knew that not only were the 6 clones of Brother Fei annihilated, there was also the legendary Liang Yunqi, the Dragon of Clouds. He had probably already turned into a dragon god that no one had ever seen in the Sea of Clouds. His body and soul had been completely destroyed. It was the end of a legend, the final chapter. The old general of Dayuan stared blankly at the clouds. Suddenly, his eyes rolled back and he fainted. He had never thought that a simple test would actually cause him to lose the anchor of Dayuan's martial artists. With the cultivation base of a 10th perfection Grandmaster, he could not even escape from the 9 heavens domain that had lost the 9 supremes guarding it. Why aren't you all moving? Chapter 192. Han Sanha was silent for a long time before he finally spoke in a low voice. Did anyone notice anything just now? The 3 old marshals beside him nodded quietly. What did they notice? Yun Yang could not help but wonder. Even I didn't notice anything odd? You fellows did? I'd like to hear what you fellows have noticed. Han Sanha said, this old man observed carefully just now. The thick fog that shrouds the residence of 9 supremes has always been there. Perhaps this can be overlooked because the residence of 9 supremes has always been like this. No matter what happened, it hasn't changed at all. It's probably the foundation of the 9 heavens domain, and it also serves to block the line of sight as much as possible. However, the thunder and lightning, the glint of blood, the howling of the wind, and even the raging inferno that surged into the sky, all of them working together to suppress the intruders. It was a terrifying sight to behold, Han Sanha said in a low voice cautiously. However, the other manifestations such as earth, water, wood, cloud, and metal did not appear to assist in the battle. The meaning behind this is intriguing. Once Han Sanha said this, everyone's gaze flickered. Could it be understood that 4 of the 9 supremes are still alive? Han Sanha felt his voice turning hoarse as well. Supreme Thunder, Supreme Wind, Supreme Blood, and Supreme Flame, these 4 Supremes are still alive? The energy that hasn't appeared can be understood as, they are all dead? Everyone fell silent at the same time. Even if they understood it this way, at least 4 of the 9 Supremes were still alive. These 4 people were enough to prop up Yutong. However, where were they now? The rustling sound of sweeping could be heard again. The old soldiers began to sweep the floor meticulously like before. One of the large brooms was about to reach their feet. Are you done looking? Are you done? The old soldier held the broom, his eyes filled with mockery and contempt as he said faintly, if you're done, leave quickly. If you wish to continue exploring, please leave early. After you leave, we still have to clean this place and scrub it with water. Yin Yang was puzzled. Why do we have to do this? Because this piece of land is dirty. It's been tarnished. The veteran said indifferently and began to sweep the ground again. Dirty? Tainted? The generals of the continent were momentarily dumbfounded. We've only been standing here for a while. How did the ground become dirty? Tainted? What kind of explanation was that? Could it be that she had been tainted by us? Everyone involuntarily took a few steps back, only to see a few one-armed men carrying buckets of water. With a splash, the water splashed onto the ground where everyone had just been standing. Then 7 or 8 veterans bent down and rubbed the ground hard, carefully cleaning it. Then, another bucket of water. The eyes of the generals were filled with rage. This was going too far. Yin Yang said slowly, no need to be surprised. This is the respect the people of Yutong have for the 9 Supremes Lords. This respect will not diminish with the passage of time. Although the 9 Supremes Lords are no longer here, this place is still not to be tainted by anyone. In my opinion, cleaning the ground with water is already the greatest courtesy we can offer you. It's a great tolerance that we didn't go up in F***ck you all. Humans must be content. Those who are content will always be happy, those who aren't. Yun Yang crossed his arms and faced all the generals in front of him, including Han Sanha, arrogantly, and said, Generals, you can ask yourselves who has the confidence to say that after he's dead, there will still be so many people who would do this for him. Is there anyone who has the confidence to say that after he's dead for a few years, there will still be? Yun Yang did not finish his sentence, ending it with a cold chuckle. The faces of the generals in the camp suddenly turned red. Looking at Yun Yang's disdainful gaze, even the old generals could not help but feel ashamed. Compared to the silent residents of 9 Supremes, their achievements in this lifetime were just a drop in the bucket. Of course the 9 Supremes are powerful enough. Otherwise we wouldn't have come here to pay our respects. The youth in black looked at Yun Yang coldly. But what are you so proud of? Look at you, it's as if you're one of the 9 Supremes. Let's talk about your first question first. Say pay your respects. Yun Yang's face was full of mockery. Child, so when you pay your respects to your ancestors you'll first think about how to dig it up? Or perhaps you'll invite a mighty figure to probe the ancestral graves. I really didn't expect the customs of other countries to be so different from Yutong. Today I've learned another world. This trip is not in vain, it's not in vain. However, isn't your method of paying respects a little too disrespectful to your ancestors? Anyway, if my descendants dare to treat their ancestors like this, I'll consider it lucky if they don't die. The youth in black was at a loss for words, his face flushed and his eyes spitting fire. What about me? Yun Yang said mercilessly, I'm just a tour guide. Do you still want to stop me from speaking? I'm sorry, you can stop me from eating but you can't stop me from speaking. Also, I'm proud because the 9 Supremes are in Yutong. They're Yutong's people. Why don't you ask those veterans if they're as proud as I am? We're like the 9 Supremes, we're all Yutong's people. Yun Yang raised his head and said, besides, Yutong doesn't only have the 9 Supremes, there's also the Shangguan family of generals. There's also the Hall of Loyal Soul. What do you have? Yun Yang chuckled delightedly. We respect our heroes to such an extent, it comes from our sincerity. But the few of you. I won't talk about it, the youth in black said angrily, go on. What about us? You know your own family best. Do you really want an outsider to talk about it? Yun Yang said coldly, forget it. I didn't want to open up your scars but since you want to hear it so much I'll talk about it. He paused and said, let's start with the Empire of Dongxian. Let's start with your god of war Han Sanha. He's the pride of Dongxian, isn't he? It's a pity that this martial Han, who's meritorious to Dongxian, is an enemy to us who has a blood debt. However, to what extent is your martial Han suspected by the royal family in your country now? Do you really need me to say this? Yun Yang said faintly, let's not talk about anything else. Let's talk about whether Marshal Han can enjoy the same treatment as the Shangguan family of generals or the 9 supremes. I'll only ask Marshal Han Sanha this. How long do you think your family can survive after you've passed away? Do you dare to speak your mind to me? Yun Yang's gaze was like a knife, his words were like a knife as well. Every strike was aimed at the most crucial point. Han Sanha paled, speechless for a moment. Yun Yang's words had hit him where it hurt the most. If Han Sanha were to die, his family would lose this great umbrella. Annihilation would only be a matter of time. This was something the entire continent could see, it was undeniable. Before Han Sanha could answer, Yun Yang turned to look at the other 3 old marshals from the other 3 countries. Marshal Xiao Yintian of the Empire of Tianxi, do you think your position and situation in the Empire of Tianxi are any different from Marshal Han's? Perhaps you can confidently say that your situation is better than Marshal Han's, but how much better is this better? Is there even a strand of hair? Xiao Yuntian's white beard trembled, unable to respond. The old marshal who has fainted over there is from the Empire of Deyuan. Your situation must be better than Marshal Han or Marshal Xiao, much better, Yun Yang said faintly. Now that Deyuan's emperor and officials are on good terms, there's nothing to worry about. However, there seems to be a limit to this, or perhaps it's temporary. This young master has heard that His Majesty the Empire of Deyuan's emperor is smart and vigorous despite his age. He even had a little princess a few years ago, but he's still 75 years old now, isn't he? He's deposed 3 or 4 crown princes in total. The crown prince now has been crown prince for more than 10 years, I think he's almost 40. It's said that he's rather anxious for the throne. Yun Yang said faintly, these are all internal affairs of the royal family, they have nothing to do with the old marshal. However, I've also heard that the old marshal and the crown prince before he became crown prince had an affair. Back then, the crown prince who was still a prince had his eyes on the old marshal's granddaughter, but the old marshal was adamant about it. Later on, the granddaughter had mysteriously returned home after an outing and committed suicide. It said that the old marshal had barged into the palace and beat the crown prince, who was still a prince at the time, into a coma because of this. Yun Yang said, I wonder how well old Marshal's family will fare after His Highness the Crown Prince ascends to the throne. Perhaps His Highness the Crown Prince is wise and mighty, forgetting the past. That's not impossible. Actually, there's no concrete evidence for these gossips. I didn't want to mention it and I shouldn't have. However, why do you all treat our country's hero like this? Don't blame me then. Rumors are always baseless, but there's always a reason behind it. Yun Yang's gaze fell on the last old marshal and said faintly, you must be the Empire of Zio's Marshal Z. I've only mentioned you last because your situation is the most stable. There's basically nothing much to say. After all, Marshal Z is of royal blood and is His Majesty's biological brother from the same mother. Your situation is as stable as a mountain. But, there are some things, old marshal, do I need to be frank? Marshal Z gritted his teeth and said, then there's no need to say it. Yun Yang turned to look at the residents of 9 Supremes and said faintly, the Empire of Yutong's emperor is at the prime of his life and possesses a profound cultivation base. No matter what, it's only a matter of time before he reigns for another 30 years. What happened to your side won't happen here. You all can't deny this, can you? Besides, for more than 100 years, the Empire of Yutong's military generals have held military power in each generation. The military power in the Empire's generals' hands is more than 70%. However, have the past emperors ever suspected anyone? Chapter 193. From the Shangguan family of generals in the beginning, to the military generals like Qiu Lingtia now. It's not impossible that there aren't any achievements that can intimidate the emperor, but it's rare that the emperor doesn't mind it. This is the true harmony between the emperor and his subjects. As for the 9 supreme sirs, His Majesty doesn't even know the names, identities, or appearances of the 9 supreme sirs, but he dares to entrust the fate of the nation and the war to us. How generous is he? Now that all of you have come here to compete with us, do you think you can win? To say that all of you are arrogant and overestimating yourselves is an understatement. You're like ants trying to shake a tree. Yun Yang's cold gaze slid across the faces of the generals as he said softly, that's why I'm so proud in front of all of you. It's because I'm a citizen of Yutong. Not only me, but every citizen in the Empire of Yutong will be equally proud when faced with all of you. This isn't just my pride alone, it's the pride of the entire nation. Yun Yang smiled and turned to look at the youth in black, saying mockingly, child, I know that your identity is extraordinary and that you have an extraordinary background. If you really have the guts, Go back and tell your emperor not to be suspicious of Han Sanha. Can you do it? The youth in black snorted angrily and turned his face away, gritting his teeth. This time he did not even want to reply with a word or two. He could not do it. He really could not do it. If this could be done easily, would Han Sanha not have done it a long time ago? Why would he have waited until now? When the group arrived at the residence of 9 Supremes, they argued all the way. Who would have thought that they would still argue all the way when they left the residence of 9 Supremes? Just as the group was about to turn a corner, everyone turned at the same time and stared at the residence of 9 Supremes that was shrouded in mist, their gazes growing increasingly complicated. No matter what, this place would definitely become a legend in the Tianshan continent. It would become a sacred place in the Empire of Yutong or even the entire world. Yun Yang looked like he did not notice anything, only walking forward angrily. In reality, the reactions of every single person in the various countries were all under his observation and observation. Among the 200 men, some were deep in thought, some were frowning in contemplation, some had glints in their eyes and some looked menacing. Someone would definitely come to the residence of 9 Supremes again tonight. Yun Yang could figure this out even if he used his buttocks to think. In spite of this, Yun Yang was not the least bit worried. To put it bluntly, Yun Yang was confident that he could kill Ling Xiaozue even if he were to challenge the residence of 9 Supremes formation. Even the world's #1 expert was defeated, not to mention others. Come, the more the better. It would be best if the 200 of you charged into the formation together and all of you died inside. That would be the real solution. Since the beginning of the return journey, the generals of various countries had surprisingly realized that the Yutong tour guide seemed to be unprecedentedly passionate. Hey everyone, how about we go to the Ni Chang Pavilion tonight? There are a lot of beautiful girls there and all of them are talented. They only sell their skills but not their bodies. It's just that they pick their customers. You have to have some confidence in yourself to go there. If you're really taken by a girl, it won't look good. Is it because you don't like it or because you don't have confidence? Why don't we go to the fairy's nest? Although the girls there aren't real fairies, they all resemble immortals and are definitely not for show. You don't like it? You don't like such an elegant place? Then let's go to the Rouge and Powder brothel. The ladies there are all soft and fragrant. Do you all prefer the most direct method? We're all men, just say it. If you want something simple and direct, go to the Hall of Beauties. We'll let you in as long as you pay. Not only are the girls beautiful, they're even better at martial arts. I guarantee that you'll enjoy yourself so much that you forget to go home. Oh, where do you all want to go? Say something, you must have a preference. I can arrange it if you tell me. Besides, didn't you all come all the way here for this? Don't be shy, you're a man, is it so hard to say something? Quick. Oh, you're shy with me? We're all men, we know each other. Could it be that you've been in the military for too long that you've developed a special hobby? That's not a problem. Although I'm not good at this and Yutong doesn't have many places like that, it's not a problem to find a few to help you solve your problems. However, you have to do it one by one, you can't be too violent. Yun Yang had been extremely passionate along the way, recommending them with all his might and talking nonsense. The generals of various countries looked at this bastard with a sideways glance, but no one answered him. Look at how passionate you are, we almost forgot that you've been scolding us all the way here because of this. We almost forgot that you've been scolding us so harshly just now. In spite of this, the main reason why everyone ignored Yun Yang was because he had gone overboard with his words. It was also because the other side had just lost a superb expert. Everyone had not calmed down yet. Their minds were still filled with the mysteriousness and power of the residence of 9 Supremes. How could they be in the mood to consider anything else? Besides, you bastard, you keep saying that you're all here to visit prostitutes and all that nonsensical introduction. How are we supposed to go when you've already said that? Everyone's dignity has been torn off by you, yet we still want to follow you to the brothel? You're thinking too much. Even the few generals who were lecherous and could not sleep without women were wary. What if they followed this fellow into the brothel and he shouted, "This is the Empire of Dongxuan's General Zhang Gu, coming all the way here to find Yutong's lady to relieve his lust. Everyone, you must serve him well." Then the prostitutes would probably suddenly go berserk and chase them out of the brothel. That would truly be an embarrassment to one's grandmother's house. What was the possibility of Yun Yang doing something like this? Everyone thought about it. Judging from the integrity this fellow had displayed throughout the day, it was 100% certain that he would do it. Perhaps there was something even worse. What if they were doing it with their butts bare and this fellow suddenly barged in with his men? Based on such careful consideration, everyone ignored Yun Yang's passionate invitation like they were deaf and mute. They could not hear, they did not want to speak, they were not in the mood at all. Why don't? Yun Yang said tentatively, let's play somewhere else? We can't just walk for a day, can we? Still no one spoke. F***CK, what do all of you want? Why don't you King fart? Yun Yang finally found a reason to lash out and exploded. Tell me, have all of you become mute? You've asked me to be your tour guide, but you won't talk to me until now. I've already swallowed my pride and introduced all of you to places of your dreams, yet you're treating me like this. What do all of you want? Yun Yang howled in indignation. Are all of you trying to play me to death? All the generals were exasperated, almost groaning in pain with their palms. Everyone could not help but think that this fellow was not easy to get along with. Han Sanha's head throbbed as well. He could already tell that this fellow called Yun Yang was an even more troublesome presence than Qiu Jianhan. He was purely here to toy with them. Moreover, he was enjoying it tirelessly. He was a scoundrel. He had been talking nicely just a moment ago, but in the blink of an eye, he had turned hostile and started scolding them. Following that, he had gone on a rampage and started a war of words with everyone. Then, he had switched his stance swiftly to strike up a conversation with someone to establish a familiar atmosphere. Once they had become familiar, he would start scolding them again without warning, digging all sorts of traps with ease. Yun Yang had such a talent. It had only been a day and a half, but he had already changed his expression 5 to 6 times. Even Han Sanha found it hard to deal with this troublemaker, both mentally and physically exhausted. Did we come here with ulterior motives, or were we just playing along with this child so that he could greatly increase Yutong's cohesiveness? This was simply, besides there were so many of us here. Which one of us was not a legendary general in the Tianshan continent? Most of the people in the continent would be filled with respect when they saw us. Those who were more cowardly would even be silenced by the aura of the iron-blooded generals. In spite of this, not only was it useless in front of this young Master Yun, it had even led to the opposite effect. He could laugh and scold freely, laughing when he wanted to laugh and jumping up and down when he wanted to scold. He could still come forward to make friends after he was done scolding them. All the old generals were experienced and knowledgeable, but this was the first time they had seen such a shameless troublemaker. Compared to Qiu Jianhan, who was renowned in the military world and was publicly acknowledged by the nations, this child seemed to be even better. After all, Qiu Jianhan was only thick-skinned, he was not completely shameless. This young Master Yun, on the other hand, could be incomparably delicate one moment and brazenly tear off his own skin and stuff it into his pocket the next. Faced with such a troublemaker, even with Han Sanha's experience and wisdom, he was helpless and could only sigh helplessly. Why don't we drink? Yun Yang scolded for a while before he suddenly rolled his eyes and put on his most gentle smile again. The smile on his face was so sincere that no one could bear to reject him. I'll go get a few pots of blood of the hero later. Let's drink until we're drunk. Don't worry, these few pots of wine are all on me. I won't make you spend. It's rare for us to meet and we're good friends. Money is but a mere worldly possession, it's not worth much. Young Master Yun said. Good friends? Whoever has a friend like you must not have burned incense in their past life, their ancestral graves would have exploded long ago. The generals were filled with disgust. However, their eyes still shone. Blood of the hero? Chapter 194. Yun Yang had used the blood of the hero as bait, but he had only tasted it. The soldiers who were still intoxicated by the wine could not resist much. Besides, they still had to stay here for more than 10 days and had so many plans to execute. It would not be good if their relationship with this designated tour guide was strained. Didn't you, Yun Yang, want to put on an act? Who doesn't know how to do that? However, feigning civility is what we are good at. All right, young Master Yun is straightforward indeed. A bearded general stood up with a smile. We still have to take 2 more pots of wine. What's the problem? 1,500 silver taels per pot. How many pots should we take? Yun Yang said generously. Who's going to pay? The bearded general glared at Yun Yang for a long time but could not utter a single word. Didn't you say you were going to treat us just now? Yun Yang stared at them with clear, righteous eyes and said matter-of-factly, I said that I would treat all of you to a few pots of wine. Of course I meant it. However, it's only a few pots. Are you sure that a few pots are enough for all of you to drink? Do you want me to pay for the rest? There's no such logic in this world. In the face of such righteousness and confidence, who could resist such a confident speech? The bearded general was fuming for a moment, but he did not dare to argue with Yun Yang. After all, in terms of shamelessness, Even if the generals of the allied forces were to come together, they would not be this child's opponent. Moreover, he was alone. It was better not to embarrass himself. I'll do it. The bearded general was gritting his teeth when he fished out the banknotes. He had snatched the one to pay the bill with his first move. Even when he knew that he had the upper hand, it was still depressing to take the loss. How much exactly? We have quite a lot of people here, 200 of us. Yunyang asked enthusiastically, 100 pots? Is 100 pots enough? The man held his breath and gritted his teeth. A pot is 20 caddies, 100 pots would be 2,000 caddies. How can we drink so much? Give me 100 pots. Looking at the strange gazes of the surrounding generals, the bearded general finally waved his hand generously. He could not afford to lose face like this. The general is straightforward after all, definitely a great character, bright and heroic. Yunyang took the banknotes and laughed. I'll go arrange for the wine now. And the dishes that go with it? Shopkeeper. Come, pick your signature dishes and serve 20 tables. Do you see that forthright general over there? Just settle the bill with him without any hesitation. Yunyang exited the room beaming. I'll go get the wine now. It'll be quick. I'll be right back. Before he finished speaking, he disappeared with a whoosh. The general's eyes widened in shock. This bastard. He actually threw the money for the food to me? How much silver did I bring? These silvers? I still need to buy wine for my brothers and transport it back. But from the looks of it, he would probably go bankrupt after eating this meal. A few generals from the same country as him stood up silently. Dayuan will pay for this meal. Han Sanha's eyes glinted. The generals of Dayuan seemed to be quite united. According to what he knew, this bearded man had a fiery temper and did not have a good relationship with his colleagues. However, not only did the others not kick him when he was down, they had completely put aside their personal grudges and shouldered this meal in the name of Dayuan. Even though Yunyang's method of losing money was like a stroke of genius, the pressure was much lesser now that it was distributed among 50 people. Even if there were still losses, it was not as severe as it seemed. That night, the tower to heaven was brightly lit and extremely noisy. Yunyang grabbed the wine and urged them to drink. Come, cheers. Another bowl. Let's drink together. Everyone is generous indeed, come. Men of the military indeed, one more. This wine is great, it makes my blood boil. Come, let's drink. As they drank, many of the generals grew disgruntled. We're all drinking a bowl and you're only taking a sip. What is this? You've already drunk with dozens of us, but you haven't even finished half of this bowl, have you? This child is playing tricks. A few people rushed over. Swoosh. Yunyang emptied it in one gulp. Come, let's get serious now. The crowd was stunned. Had he been drinking the entire time just now? However, Yunyang's alcohol tolerance was quite good. He downed bowl after bowl without a change in expression. They drank until midnight, swaying from side to side and piling up under the tables. However, Yunyang's eyes were sharp. From the beginning to the end, he was paying attention to every detail. There were many who drank too much or were drunk, but at least 3 or 4 of them had left the banquet, their whereabouts unknown. After a while, the drunkenness grew stronger, but there were another 7 or 8 people missing. If it had been someone else, they might have suspected that these fellows had drunk too much and had gone to find a place to sleep, but Yunyang did not think so. These fellows had come with ulterior motives, how could they miss the opportunity? He had purposely created a messy drinking opportunity. Would they let go of this chance to take advantage of the chaos? 99% of those who had gone missing had gone to the residence of 9 Supremes. Yunyang's gaze flickered as he hopped onto the table with a loud thud and hollered, Who else? Who else is a man? Come drink with me. I'll drink all of you to death today. Another round of guzzling, another 17 or 18 people were missing. Yunyang could see clearly that those who were missing were the attendants and guards of the generals. Not a single one of the great imperial generals was missing. Let's go, the more the merrier. Yunyang finally felt that it was about time, stumbling towards Han Sanha. Marshal Han, I propose a toast to you. Come on, cheers. He raised his bowl and craned his neck. The crimson wine dripped, but most of it landed on his neck. Then young Master Yun rolled his eyes and chuckled. Good wine. Good wine. How King satisfying. Before he could finish, a certain someone closed his eyes and collapsed. Coincidentally, she fell right into Han Sanha's embrace. Thunderous snores could be heard immediately. She was snoring as she slept, and wine was spilling out of her mouth at the same time. Was he drunk? Han Sanha was caught off guard by the sudden turn of events. He watched as Yun Yang fell asleep in his embrace, sleeping in such an odd manner. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. Han Sanha tried a few more times to make sure that the fellow was truly unconscious. He could not help sighing. This bastard really knew how to pick his targets. Whoever he had fallen to, he would have been kicked away, but he had fallen into Han Sanha's embrace. Han Sanha was crowned the continent's top general, the continent's god of war. Even if he wanted to, he could not bring himself to do such a thing. However, was he supposed to just hug him to sleep? Han Sanha thought about it and felt a chill run down his spine. Send him to a room. Watching Yun Yang being sent away, Han Sanha's gaze turned deep. The youth dressed in black beside him was looking at Han Sanha with a questioning gaze. Don't go. Han Sanha sucked in a deep breath and said, give up on the operation against the residents of Nine Supremes? The young man in black was confused. If those people who went there earlier come back, it's not too late for you to go tomorrow. Han Sanha said in a low voice, if they don't come back, I hope you'll give up on this idea. The youth in black lowered his head and nodded silently. What do you think of this young Master Yun? Han Sanha asked. He's just a popinjay. What can he do? The youth in black pursed his lips in disdain. What can he do? Han Sanha sucked in a breath, his gaze clear. This person is an extremely terrifying and extraordinary character. There's no mistaking this. An extremely terrifying character? Just from the fact that he fell into your arms defenselessly just now, how could he be considered extremely terrifying? The youth in black rolled his eyes and said, besides, even if he's really terrifying, he won't be a threat anymore. Han Sanha asked, What did you do? I used a soul-sealing needle to test if he was really drunk. A murderous glint flashed in the youth's eyes. The poison on the needle will act up half a month later. I've already confirmed that the poison of the soul-sealing needle has melted into his bloodstream as a blue line. So, even if this person is immensely capable, he's doomed? The youth in black said. Han Sanha frowned and asked, are you confident? There's no antidote to the soul-sealing needle. The youth's gaze was cold. It's just like that poison. Han Sanha sighed softly and frowned, as if he did not agree with such a method. However, he did not say anything in the end, only saying faintly, this old man is already old. The youth in black said, Marshall is in his prime, how can you say that you're old? He then stopped talking and helped Han Sanha back to their room to rest. In the guest room, Yun Yang was sprawled out on the bed, his snores deafening, sleeping like a dead pig. However, one of his right hands was placed at the base of his thighs. Yun Yang's snores were rhythmic. His eyes were shut and his eyeballs were unmoving. Occasionally he would mumble and spit out a mouthful of wine. If anyone saw him like this, they wouldn't suspect that he was pretending to be drunk. However, on his right thigh his right hand moved quickly. A faint blue light suddenly flashed on his thigh, and a needle as thin as a cow's hair had already reached between his two fingers. In the blink of an eye, the blue needle had disappeared. Yun Yang's mind was clear. What a vicious move. Chapter 195. There's no antidote for the soul-sealing spike. Everyone in the world knows this. However, the soul-sealing spike has its origins. It's from the school of spring and autumn. It's the school's unique secret weapon. Could this youth be related to the school of spring and autumn? Is the school of spring and autumn related to the Four Seasons Tower? Spring and autumn? But it occupies half of the Four Seasons. Is it a coincidence or is there something else? Also, the poison of the soul-sealing spike is somewhat similar to the poison in His Majesty. Could it be, in Yun Yang's heart, it was like a huge, intricate machine was operating meticulously. Yun Yang could clearly feel that he seemed to have grasped something, found something. Yun Yang did not sleep that night. He was only pretending to be asleep the entire time, pretending to be drunk. However, it was not only Yun Yang who did not sleep well. Too many people did not sleep well either. To be more precise, the entire Tiantang city did not sleep well. For the latter half of the night, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled as the wind howled. It only stopped when it was almost dawn. The rumbling of thunder and lightning and the howling wind caused half of Tiantang city to tremble. Later on, one or a few strange roars could be heard continuously, but they were drowned out by the even more persistent thunder. Everyone was waiting for a result. However, to everyone's knowledge, Yun Yang had slept exceptionally soundly. The reason they came to such a conclusion was that there were many who had come to check on young Master Yun's sleeping state. However, seeing that young Master Yun had not even changed his position from the beginning to the end, sleeping like a pig with thunderous snores, they could only shake their heads speechlessly. This fellow could really sleep. The lightning and thunder were so loud that the ground was almost turning upside down. It was the end of the world outside, yet this fellow could still sleep so soundly. Could it be that he was fighting it with his thunderous snoring? Was his thunderous snoring really that effective? However, no one was interested in paying attention to him anymore. Because what happened last night really shocked everyone to the point of indescribable, shocking fear. The nation's losses at the residence of 9 Supremes last night had been immense. Yin Yang's guess was right. They were only there to scout during the day, but at night, it was their main show against the residence of 9 Supremes. The existence of the residence of 9 Supremes in Yutong was like a sharp sword that was always hanging over the heads of other countries. Thinking back to the 9 Supremes' invincible prowess back then, thinking about how the 9 Supremes could sweep the battlefield with their insignificant cultivation base combined with the power bestowed by the 9 Heavens domain, they were invincible. How could he not covet it? The 9 Supremes seemed to be dead and had disappeared, but there were signs that indicated that there were still people alive among the 9 Supremes. Even if it could be confirmed that at least half of the 9 Supremes were dead, the remaining few were still not to be underestimated. They still had the ability to stir up a storm and turn the world upside down. Besides, the 9 Heavens domain was right here. What if the Empire of Yutong had completed the 9 Supremes? This is not impossible, right? He had to eliminate this hidden danger and nip it in the bud. Even if he could not bring the 9 Heavens domain back to study and use it for his own use, he could at least destroy it. It was based on this mentality that the other countries had still sent out a large number of people despite the presence of De Yuan's legend, broken halberd sinks into sand, and Brother Fei who was severely injured during the day. There were a total of 18 top-notch experts and 6 high-level mystical beasts. The lineup was extravagant. If these people attacked together, they were confident that they could defeat Ling Xiaozue even if they were to face him head-on. This formidable combat force that the other countries had high hopes for split into 24 directions and attacked the residence of 9 Supremes at the same time. Unfortunately, not a single one of them made it out. Not only the top-notch experts, but even the 6 high-level mystical beasts, especially the 2 8th-level flying mystical beasts, did not make it out. The thunder and lightning in the residence of 9 Supremes and the howling of the wind lasted for the entire night, only returning to peace at dawn. However, the residence of 9 Supremes was still the residence of 9 Supremes, unshaken and no different from the day before. However, the 18 experts and 6 high-level Shen beasts that entered had all disappeared without a trace, and there were no longer any signs of life. Like a clay ox sinking into the sea, they had collapsed, never to be seen again. However, after losing so many top-notch combat forces, not even the slightest bit of information about the residence of 9 Supremes had been obtained. Not even a single tile of the residence of 9 Supremes had been damaged. Not even the shape of the clouds above the residence of 9 Supremes had been damaged. This result was unacceptable to the other countries. Other than the Empire of Dongxian, the other 3 countries were filled with regret. They had suffered a huge loss this time. The next morning Yunyang woke up and walked out groggily. He washed his face while staggering, finally looking much more energetic. In the hall, Han Sanhe and the youth dressed in black watched him from the corner of their eyes. Yunyang had only taken 2 steps before he began to scratch his thigh with his right hand, seemingly unintentionally. He scratched it forcefully, then another 2 steps and continued to scratch it forcefully. It's so itchy, why is it so itchy? Yunyang frowned. The legendary Tower to Heaven Inn's top-notch guest room actually has so many mosquitoes. It doesn't live up to its reputation. There was a smile in the youth's eyes. It was the smugness of his plan succeeding. Han Sanhe heaved a soft sigh of relief as well. It looked like the soul-sealing spike had really entered Yun Yang's bloodstream. Then it was not a complete loss. Where are we going to play today? Yun Yang had taken a huge piece of mystical beast meat out of nowhere. His mouth was covered in grease as he asked with a lisp, "Bosses, which brothel do you want to go to? Have you figured it out after thinking for a whole night? Just say it, no problem at all." The youth in black frowned and said impatiently, "Can you not mention the word brothel?" Yun Yang answered readily, "All right. Which brothel do you want to go to?" The youth in black was exasperated. "Can you say something less vulgar?" "Sure, which brothel do you want to go to? Is this elegant enough?" Yun Yang asked. The generals from the Empire of Dongxian ignored him while the generals from the other empires looked grim. No one spoke for a long while. No one was in a good mood. Who would be interested in talking to him? They did not even want to quarrel anymore. Han Sanhe sighed and said, "Let us pay our respects to the family of generals today." Once he said that, Han Sanhe felt a wave of discomfort wash over him. This meant that the other empires had completely given up on the residence of 9 Supremes operation from now on. Dongxian did not send anyone out last night, preserving their strength. However, the more it was so, the more alert Han Sanhe was. Since the residence of 9 Supremes was so powerful, would there be a chance for it to be used again in the future? Would there be a new 9 Supremes? What came next was to find those who were still alive among the 9 Supremes and destroy them at all costs. Otherwise, this sword that was hanging above their heads could fall at any time. Han Sanhe's suggestion was unanimously agreed upon by the other old marshals. Even those who were frowning were nodding their heads in agreement. When they walked out of the door, Yun Yang did a seemingly unintentional count and exclaimed in surprise, "This isn't right. The number of people isn't right. There are 200 of you. Even if one was trapped in the residence of 9 Supremes yesterday and another is severely injured, there should be at least 198 people left. Why are there only 180 now? Where are the others? Have they ascended to heaven?" The generals glared at him as if they wanted to devour him. This fellow's mouth was truly despicable. He just had to touch on a sore spot. However, Yun Yang's question was completely reasonable and logical. Yun Yang's current official identity was that of a tour guide sent by Yutong. It was natural for him to count the number of people and ask about the whereabouts of those who were missing. However, the other empires did not know how to answer him. They could not possibly say, "Those people who went on a mission last night have all died," can they? They were here as guests, at least on the surface. Go look for them quickly. Yun Yang reminded them kindly, "It won't be good if we miss someone. Could it be that they're still sleeping after drinking too much last night? Their alcohol tolerance is a little low, they've only drunk so little." A general said with a dark expression, "There's no need to look for them. Since they haven't come out yet, it means that they don't want to participate in today's mission." "What are you talking about?" Yun Yang asked in confusion. "Don't they respect the Shangguan family of generals?" Before his words echoed in the air, his tone turned indignant as he said angrily, "Why don't they go to the family of generals? What do you mean? Quickly call them over. This is too much. This is too much." All the generals had the urge to strangle him. "Those people are all dead. Where are we going to get them to call for help? If we really go, not only will we not be able to call them back, we won't be able to come back as well. There's no need to be so serious. The Shangguan family of generals and the generals of other empires have been enemies for generations. There's a deep grudge between them. Not everyone has to respect them completely. Our standpoints are different after all. If they don't want to go, then they don't want to go. Let us go." Han Sanhe's expression was dark as he said, "There's no need to dwell on these minor details." Yun Yang widened his eyes and did not say anything else, but his mouth continued to grumble and grumble. No one knew what he was cursing. One of the men came closer and heard, "A bunch of bastards, not worshipping the family of generals when you've come to Yutong. I curse your entire family to die without descendants, to have green smoke rising from your ancestral graves." He almost fell to the ground with a somersault. This bastard's curse was too vicious. Chapter 196. Han Sanhe's words calmed the situation down immediately. Han Sanhe's words made sense. The Shangguan family of generals was indeed revered by the continent's military. It was undeniable and unquestionable. However, they had been enemies for generations. Although the Shangguan family of generals was now filled with widows, orphans, and children, and all the men and women had been killed, the number of soldiers who had perished in the Shangguan family of generals was several times more than that. These fallen soldiers had descendants as well. Even if they revered the Shangguan family of generals' loyalty, they were still irreconcilable enemies. It was reasonable that they still held a grudge against the Shangguan family of generals for paying respects to them today. Yun Yang was still mumbling as he led the way, cursing as he walked. "What kind of bastards are these? They said they were here to be guests, but they didn't follow the rules. How dare they cause trouble at such an important time to raise their own statuses? Your father curses these bastards that they won't be able to wake up from their slumber. What's the point of living if they don't show up for such an important event? Hurry up and die, reincarnate." The generals from the other countries were breathing heavily, their eyes wide as they stared at Yun Yang in disbelief. Even if they wanted to retort, they did not have the words to do so. Yun Yang had been mumbling along the way, the generals from the other countries almost breaking down from his nagging. The experience was an unprecedented, depressing one. They had been scolded all the way to the residence of 9 Supremes, and they had been scolded all the way here to the family of generals. King Hell, they had come to Yutong this time to spend money to get scolded. Other than spending a lot of money, they had basically accomplished nothing. Other than losing their soldiers and their capabilities, the only thing left was to be scolded. What are the 4 generals from the other empires doing now? His Majesty looked at old Marshal Chiu, who was sitting opposite him, in a relaxed manner. I heard that the residents of 9 Supremes caused a huge commotion last night. The entire Tiantang city could sense it. Chiu Jinhan was about to speak when his shoulders suddenly shook. He could not help but burst into laughter. Just as he opened his mouth, he coughed. Ah. Ha. His Majesty secretly rolled his eyes, watching the old man go crazy quietly. Perhaps your Majesty doesn't know, the old marshal laughed for a long time before he finally stopped. His body was still trembling, looking as if he could burst into laughter at any time. The residence of 9 Supremes is, of course, as stable as a mountain. I heard that many of their men have died inside, including De Yuan's unrivaled expert, the Dragon of Clouds, Liang Yunqi. However, there's something else that makes this old man unable to contain his excitement. I have to say, Hansan's eyes are sharp indeed. He took a liking to Yun Yang at first glance and wanted him to be their guide. He's really chosen the right person. His Majesty was puzzled. Why did you choose the right person? Cough. I heard that Yun Yang, this child, has almost played the envoys to death. Chiu Jinhan laughed until he was out of breath. This child is truly a talent. His eloquence is unparalleled in the world. I heard that. Old Marshal Chiu was patient as he recounted everything that Yun Yang had done in detail. The king's eyes widened. He actually used the word brothel and caused so many people to collapse? He even caused the people to be united against a common enemy, their morale unprecedentedly high. He even scolded the people of other countries in front of the residents of 9 Supremes, so badly that they couldn't fight back even if they attacked him together? He scolded them all the way. Then he made a fortune selling wine? He's still scolding them all the way? Scolding the generals of other countries like they're his grandchildren? As he spoke, the emperor's hearty laughter broke through the hall and reverberated in the air above the royal palace, causing everyone who heard it to jump in fright. It had been a long time since they had seen His Majesty so cheerful. What was wrong with him today? Listening to his laughter, he was overjoyed. He had lost his composure. What good news could it be? It must be a very, very good thing to make His Majesty lose his composure like this. Towards the end of his laughter, His Majesty was already out of breath, especially as he listened to the old marshal imitating Yun Yang's scolding, cheating, falling out on purpose, exploding in anger, making friends one moment and cursing the next, all sorts of evil deeds. His Majesty laughed until he almost suffocated from laughing so hard. After so many years, today was the happiest day. There shouldn't be anything today. They're only going to pay respects to the family of generals' heroic spirits. I believe these fellows won't do anything to cause trouble in the family of generals. His Majesty laughed and said, Still, I'm looking forward to what Yun Yang will do next. Old Chiu, have your men keep an eye out and report any new developments. Old Marshal Chiu was grinning from ear to ear. Don't worry, Your Majesty. How can this old man let go of such a delightful thing? This old man has even arranged secret guards along the way to all the places they're going. Be sure to record every word they say, then come back and report to this old man. It's best if they can record all of Yun Yang's expressions as well. It's a pity that I can't witness this show with my own eyes. It's a fly in the ointment. His Majesty was stunned. Was this old man making a mountain out of a molehill? He had actually deployed so many secret guards for such a trivial matter. However, it was indeed not too much of a waste to deploy secret guards for such a great show of the century. This old man has never encountered something so comforting and funny in my entire life. Of course, I have to collect more information. When these fellows leave, this old man will think about it when I have nothing to do. I'll think about it when I'm depressed too. Naturally, I'll be cheerful all the time and I won't have to worry anymore. Chiu Jinhan chuckled. The old marshal's chuckle was actually rather perverted at this moment. His Majesty coughed and said seriously, Send a copy to me after you've recorded everything. I'm here to monitor whether you're using public property for your own benefit. Do you understand? It turned out that the Emperor of all ages was also a two-faced character. He spoke righteously on the surface, but he had other thoughts in his mind. Facing the joint visit of the allied forces from various countries, the family of generals received them neither passionately nor indifferently. All in all, they conformed to the norm. Yun Yang, on the other hand, was much more well-behaved in the family of generals and did not speak much. Honestly, the old lady of the family of generals made Yun Yang feel uneasy from the bottom of his heart. He felt that he could not relax in front of this old lady, that he could not behave as he pleased. Shangguan Lingxiu led the generals to pay their respects in the ancestral hall. A few other generals were particularly interested in the Shangguan family's small drill ground and walked around it a few times. They looked at the weapons that had been rubbed until they shone as if they had been coated with a layer of oil. They looked at the ground that was harder than steel after being stepped on by countless people to practice martial arts for over 100 years. Looking at the silent rows of memorial tablets, Yi Zichen felt a chill run down his spine. They looked at the background of each Shangguan family member. All the generals' expressions became silent. Shangguan Sheng, married at the age of 15, entered the military at the age of 16, promoted to the vanguard of the army at the age of 18, died at the eastern border at the age of 20. Shangguan Jie entered the military at the age of 18. In the winter of the same year, in order to rescue his comrades who were besieged, he led 300 cavalrymen to charge into the camp. He died under arrows, not even his bones were left. Shangguan Dong became a deputy general at the age of 16, a battalion's commanding general at the age of 18, a general of one side at the age of 22, the assistant marshal of the army at the age of 25, the marshal of the eastern troop at the age of 28, the marshal of Yutong at the age of 32, killed by a stray arrow at the age of 35, Shangguan Tiannan, enlisted after getting married at the age of 17, died at the Black Rock Keep in the same month. Shangguan, the generals were shocked to realize that the men of the Shangguan family had never entered the military at the age of 20. Most of them had stepped onto the battlefield at the age of 16 or 17 and had won hundreds of meritorious deeds. Their robes were stained with blood and their corpses were buried on the battlefield. There were only a few who had died after the war. It was due to bad luck. Most of them had been promoted step by step in the military, becoming generals, and marshals with the accumulation of meritorious deeds. There was one person recorded in the records that everyone had heard the most about. Shangguan Wudi, 28 years old, was the vanguard general of the Western troop. His sworn brother was ambushed and trapped. Alone, he charged at the empire of Ziyou's 200,000-strong army from the east to the west, then from the west to the east. He charged back and forth 7 times, killing more than 10,000 of the enemy. However, his warhorse lost its front leg due to exhaustion and died under the siege of thousands of arrows. The Empire of Ziyou's generals looked at this record in great detail. The Empire of Ziyou's first marshal, Zi Yuanlong, had a particularly sour expression. Another old general from the Empire of Ziyou, Wang Yutong, whose hair and beard were all white, sighed. This old man is 93 years old this year. I'm considered old in the military. When Shangguan Wudi charged at the enemy back then, this old man was 19 years old. I was only a corporal, leading 5 brothers to serve in the army. Even though it's been 74 years, the memory of that battle is still fresh in my mind. Every time I dream of it, it's as if I can see the invincible general charging at us with a spear in hand. Back then, Shangguan Wudi wielded the overlord's sharp golden spear in his hand and rode the wind-lightning beast. 1 man and 1 steed, he regarded the army as nothing. He came and went like the wind, looking down on everyone. How majestic was that? In front of the army, he stood there alone and said to Ziyou's 200,000-strong army, "The marshal's flag is not allowed to be raised. Otherwise it shall be chopped down." How could the marshal be threatened by him then? The marshal's flag was raised high to show his might. However, the moment the marshal's flag was raised, Shangguan Wudi charged at the marshal's flag alone, breaking it with a single slash of his sword. Then he turned and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Just like that, he had broken 17 marshal's flags within a month. He was so angry that the marshal vomited blood and died. Shangguan Wudi's bravery was unparalleled in the world then. Han Sanhe said softly, if he was such a hero, why did he charge 7 times in the midst of 200,000-strong army and tire himself to death? What kind of sworn brother could make him do this? Chapter 197. Shame colored Wang Yutong's face. We weren't sworn brothers in the beginning. It was when the marshal died from vomiting blood that the marshal's son sent experts to infiltrate Yutong and kidnapped Shangguan Wudi's wife and child. Once he said that, the generals from the other countries looked at him in disdain. Every despicable method could be used on the battlefield, and the victor would always be the king. However, it was taboo to use unorthodox methods outside of the battlefield. The method of kidnapping and threatening others was the lowest and most unorthodox method. Once any general used this method, no matter how impressive he was before, what results he achieved in battle, or what achievements he would have in the future, he would no longer be qualified to be listed among the famous generals of the continent. Implicating one's wife and children was a great taboo in the military. To use such a despicable tactic against a hero of a generation was even more infuriating and contemptible. Shangguan Wudi was told that if he charged into the formation as promised and died in the end, his wife and child would be released. If he could be saved, the grudge would be forgotten. However, Shangguan Wudi's wife committed suicide immediately when she found out that she was being used to threaten her husband. The young son in her arms was killed by the woman as well. The woman said then, "How can a lowly life be compared to my husband? If my husband charged into the formation, he would die without a doubt. If I go and leave my son alive, when he grows up and finds out that his father died because of him, he would be ashamed for the rest of his life. Why don't you go to the netherworld with me? I've let you and your son down in this life, but I hope that I can make it up to you in my next life." After saying that, she killed her beloved son and committed suicide right away, a smile lingering on her lips. Shangguan Wudi charged into the formation and finally found out that his wife and child had died. He was heartbroken and decided to die in the midst of the army because he didn't want to live anymore. On the other side, Shangguan Lingxiu spoke in a cold voice, "The passing of ancestor Wudi is a great humiliation to the Shangguan family." Since then, the Shangguan family swore that if they couldn't avenge this blood feud and end this karma, they would always worship the name of their sworn brother as a cover. Grandmother and little granduncle's memorial tablets will only be returned when the blood feud is avenged. This is the blood oath ancestor Wudi made with the chi of his dantian before he died. The descendants of Shangguan will remember it. All the generals immediately became solemn. It was also from then on that the continent established a new rule. No matter how one fought on the battlefield, no matter what methods one used, it was all within reason. However, one must not make things difficult for the family and children of one's opponent. Shangguan Lingxiu's voice was like a string of ice beads falling to the ground. Yun Yang asked from the side, "What counts as revenge?" The empire of Ziyou's old marshal Wang Yutong closed his eyes dejectedly. Shangguan Lingxiu said faintly, "The marshal of the empire of Ziyou back then was Zi Hengzhong. It was his son Zi Yicheng who committed such despicable acts after his death. Zi Yicheng then initiated a mutiny and chased the empire of Ziyou's emperor off his throne. His own family became royalty. It has lasted until today. To settle this grudge, the empire of Ziyou must be annihilated and Ziyou royalty must be exterminated. Only then will it end." The empire of Ziyou's marshal, Zi Yuanlong, wore a grim expression. He too was of the empire of Ziyou's royal bloodline. He could not help feeling shaken when faced with such a story. Shangguan Lingxiu looked at him and said coldly, "Marshal Zi, don't worry. We won't attack you when you're in Yutong. To kill you, we'll have to do it on the battlefield. To annihilate Ziyou, we'll have to break through the Ziyou formation in a dignified manner and charge into Zitian City. We'll eradicate the Zihuang bloodline in a dignified manner before the world's heroes." Shangguan Lingxiu said faintly, "The continent's military grudge is only acknowledged by the nations as the only one left. As for the rest, be it life or death, victory or defeat, there's no gratitude nor grudge." The so-called no gratitude nor grudge and an invincible promise came from this. Shangguan Lingxiu's expression was calm and collected. However, Yun Yang sucked in a cold breath when he heard what she said. To annihilate the empire of Ziyou and slaughter the entire royal family. This vengeance seemed to be difficult to exact. Yun Yang had never been one to belittle himself. He could even be considered arrogant and thought highly of himself. However, Yun Yang did not have a plan to annihilate a nation's royalty with his own family at the moment. After all, it was a little too difficult. The Shangguan family, generation after generation, will not rest until one of us is dead. We'll fulfill this wish. No matter the cost, we'll reunite Ancestor Invincible's family in the underworld and in the netherworld." Shangguan Lingxiu said faintly after she finished, 50 to 60% of the Shangguan family's ancestors who are listed in the memorial tablets before us have such a story of invincible. If all of you wish to pay your respects to them one by one, I'm afraid it'll take too long." She was obviously asking them to leave. However, even Han San had dared not say anything in the face of the Shangguan family's eviction order. Among the densely packed memorial tablets, how many of them were more illustrious than his battle achievements? How many of them were the lifetime idols of the world's militants? They were not memorial tablets, they were the souls of the heroic warriors of the military. Every soldier who came here was a pilgrimage. The saying and the description was not an exaggeration at all. Everyone please? Yunyang called out, it's enough that your wish has been fulfilled. You should be content to pay your respects to the heroic spirits of the family of generals. Why are you still here? Let's go, let's go. Are you all so shameless that you insist on staying here for a meal? As he shouted, he shoved them out, chasing more than 100 generals from various countries out like they were ducks. Shangguan Lingxiu's almond-shaped eyes glanced at Yunyang in surprise. Ever since she got to know Yunyang, the impression that he had given her had always been one of politeness, gentleness, elegance, and grace. It was as if nothing could change Yunyang's innate elegance and grace, which he was born with. However, the Yunyang at this moment was a side that Shangguan Lingxiu had never seen before. He did not give them any face, he was very impolite, and there was a tinge of rascality in him. Was this the side of Yunyang that he was facing his enemies? Shangguan Lingxiu's eyes were slightly curved as she said, everyone please? As the group exited the Shangguan family of generals, everyone's hearts felt unusually heavy. After experiencing the solemnity and heaviness in the ancestral hall, their hearts were still heavy and uncomfortable. Even though the heroic soul had passed away many years ago, it was still as imposing as a mountain when he faced it. His might was unparalleled. Even if it was only the memorial tablet, the majesty was still there. When they walked out of the door, the rays of the setting sun shone on their faces, sending chills down their spines. They did not feel like they had stayed in the family of generals for long, so why was it already sunset when they came out? Since there's nothing to do tonight, this old man will not make any other arrangements. Everyone rest early. Tomorrow morning we'll go to the Broken Saber Pavilion. In the afternoon, we'll go to the Hall of Loyal Soul to pay our respects to our old rivals. Then those who wish to return home can do so, Han Sanha said. Han Sanha's words had shortened the travel time by almost half, but none of the generals from various countries had any objections. After all, they had two main objectives for coming here: the military wine and the exploration of the residence of 9 Supremes. Now that they had drunk the wine, they had tried their best to explore the residence of 9 Supremes. Other than that, there was really nothing else that he had to do. Rather than staying here and feeling the hostile gazes of the entire nation, it did not feel good. Moreover, there was Yunyang, the tour guide, who was constantly nagging and disturbing them. It was best to leave early. Besides, other than Dongxin, the exploration of the residence of 9 Supremes had also damaged the high-end combat power of each country. A conservative estimate would be that 10% of the country's high-end combat power had been lost. This loss had to be compensated as soon as possible, or else there would be hidden threats. Therefore, it was more important to return home as soon as possible. It's good that you're fine. Then I shall go home tonight and not accompany you all. These 2 days have really tired me out. This job is King difficult. I need to drink more water to replenish myself. Yunyang seemed to be relieved. Yunyang seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, but he did not know that it was the generals from the other countries who were truly relieved. They were afraid that this fellow would use his mouth again. In spite of this, all of them were grumbling inwardly, "You need to drink more water to replenish yourself? You're only thirsty because you scold us? This bastard." Han Sanha smiled faintly and said, "Thank you for your hard work, young Marquis Yun. It's my duty." Yunyang chuckled. "You all know the way back to the inn, don't you? I guess all of you won't be in the mood to gamble anymore. Why don't you just cancel the scheduled itinerary?" The generals from Deyuan snorted and said, "Does Yutang forbid gambling and playing with small amounts of money?" Yunyang rubbed his nose and said, "Of course it's not forbidden. I'm mainly afraid that after you all go in, they'll target you all and make you feel like you're facing a formidable enemy. You won't be happy and you won't be able to enjoy yourself. Especially if there's a situation where winning or losing matters and someone dies, you'll be buried in a foreign land and won't be able to return." Seek. The general screamed inwardly, "What have we done? Why does it matter if we win or lose? Why do we have to be buried in a foreign land and won't be able to return? We really shouldn't have imagined that this fellow would say anything nice and not insult us." One of Deyuan's generals could not hold it in any longer and retorted, "How can you be sure that we won't be the ones slaughtering everyone? It matters if you win or lose, but what if you lose your pants? Just tell me if you can find a place to gamble. There's no need for such nonsense." Yunyang chuckled. "Do you really want to play so badly? If you all really want to play, I can organize a single round for you all. What do you think? Single round?" The generals felt that this child was up to no good again and had set up a trap. "What single round? What single round? Are you going to participate personally?" Their voices were filled with caution. Chapter 198. Why should I? I can't be gambling buddies with all of you, but I have a few brothers and friends who are currently in Tiantang City. I believe all of you have heard about them. They are the 4 young masters of the 4 noble families of spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Other than being filthy rich, they are just as bored as all of you. If all of you want to play, I'll let the 4 of them play with all of you, win or lose, just for fun. This way the range isn't too big and there's no additional hostility. Yun Yang smiled sincerely. Of course, if you're not willing to play or can't afford to, then forget it. Gambling with them requires a certain amount of courage and wealth. It won't be fun if you're not careful. When the generals of the various countries heard this, their interest was piqued, especially the few old gamblers among them, who felt even more itchy and unbearable. Yun Yang's provocation aside, the title of the 4 noble young masters was a huge temptation. Yun Yang not playing? Gambling with the 4 noble young masters? That was not a problem at all. As long as Yun Yang did not participate in the game himself, there was no need to worry about cheating. After all, the 4 noble young masters were famous popinjays in the continent. Almost everyone knew about them. Who knows, they might even be able to get to know each other through this gamble. Even if they could not build any kind of relationship, gambling was something that depended on luck. There were so many of them here, surely their luck would be much better than those 4 fellows? The crowd had even begun to imagine that they did not need to win much. As long as each of them could win a few hundred pots of wine, it would be enough. What's the big deal about playing around? Let's set this single round for tonight. Can you arrange it? A bearded general asked. It was the general who had invited De Yuan. He was still feeling the pinch after spending so much money. Now that there was a chance to recoup his losses, how could he let it go? Will this single round be arranged in a regular casino? Another person asked. There was a big problem with this question. Under normal circumstances, there were too many experts in the profound sky continent. Controlling gambling devices remotely and interfering with the key to winning or losing was simply too easy and too common. Therefore, any slightly larger casino would set up golden profound stones. The so-called golden mystic stone was the forbidden mystic stone. In the casino, as long as there was a golden mystic stone, then within the range of the golden mystic stone's influence, no one would be able to freely use profound qi. Of course, the gold mysterious stone could only affect a cultivator's use of qi on a small scale. It could not really suppress the use of qi on a large scale. For example, if a cultivator burst out qi regardless of anything, the gold mysterious stone would no longer have any effect. However, those who used qi to cheat in the casino all used delicate and subtle methods, which were restrained by the gold mysterious stone. Other than that, there was a limit to the golden mystic rock's limitations. It would be difficult for the golden mystic rock to be effective against an expert above the 9th peak. However, the problem was, which expert above the 9th peak would be so bored as to play in a casino? Even if they did, it would be for real. Why would they use high-level mystical energy to deceive themselves? On the other hand, relatively large casinos would often use golden mystic stones as floor tiles to completely cut off the possibility of cheating. That was why that person had asked such a question. It wasn't difficult to guess that this person was definitely a frequent customer of the casino. Whether it's legal or not, we'll know immediately after we try it. Yun Yang smiled and said, the casino I mentioned even has a ceiling made of golden mystical rock. The generals were relieved when they heard him. There was really no possibility of cheating then. They could only rely on luck and skill. Almost everyone who liked to gamble felt that they were the best when it came to these 2 aspects. Let's go tonight. For a moment, 30 to 40 people's eyes lit up. Those experienced and prudent generals, or those with high authority, would not go to such a place. Those who responded were basically generals in their 30s and 40s. Some of them were even winking at Yun Yang. Yun Yang snorted inwardly. This group of fellows, firstly, wanted to win money and look for excitement. Secondly, it was because there was something going on. Especially the collusion between the generals of these few countries. There seemed to be quite a number of people who hadn't come to an agreement during this period. Perhaps they wanted to take this opportunity to communicate and discuss the possibility of cooperation. Or perhaps they were simply plotting something with each other. Yun Yang was well aware of these matters and said, that's settled then. I'll arrange it now. I'll bring everyone there after dinner. We'll meet at the entrance of the tower to heaven and then. Be there or be square. Leave quickly. Let everyone have a good time tonight. I won't be a hindrance to all of you. The generals rolled their eyes. This child knows that he's causing trouble for us as well. Han Sanha smiled and said, young Marquis Yun, don't forget that the blood of the hero that we've ordered will change on the day of our return. Please supervise us. Yun Yang replied, That won't be a problem. Actually, they're already working on it. When you leave, at least the first batch will go with you. I've already given the silver taels from the other day to the merchant, but when you take the first batch of wine away, you'll have to settle the remaining silver taels. This can't be helped. After all, they need cash to circulate as well. Just give me the money when the time comes. Han Sanha guffawed. Of course. Besides, we're not afraid that young Marquis Yun will go back on his word. After a few words, Yun Yang chuckled and turned to leave. Before the casino tonight, let's go through the follow-up plan of the four empires again, Han Sanha said in a low voice. The old marshals nodded silently. Perhaps the biggest gain from this trip was the plan of the four empires that these old men had come up with in the past few days. Other than that, there was nothing else that could be said about it. If it's possible, this old man hopes that, Han Sanha's voice was as soft as a mosquito's hum, that Yutong will be completely crippled in our hands, or even annihilated. So, old brothers, please keep your spirits up. Don't make any mistakes on your side. Of course. Our hearts are all in the same boat. Yun Yang had only stayed for a short while when he returned home before he turned into a light breeze in his room and sped towards the residence of 9 Supremes. He had to go, he could not be late. Too many experts had died in there last night. More importantly, 6 high-level mystical beasts had perished as well. If Yun Yang had been late, the mystical cores of the 6 mystical beasts would have been dissolved into pure energy by the 9 heavens domain. The 6 mystical beasts, especially the 6 mystical cores, were a huge fortune to Yun Yang, who was currently broke. He could not afford to miss it. How could he allow them to be melted away? The night was dark, the boundless darkness shrouding the heaven and earth. Only the residence of 9 Supremes was still shrouded in clouds and mist. The only similarity was that one could not even see one's own fingers. A gust of wind blew quietly. Yun Yang had entered the residence of 9 Supremes soundlessly. He had done so without anyone noticing. 18 to 19 corpses were scattered on the ground made of an unknown material. Each of them had died in the same manner. They were all charred black, even their bones had been charred. Yun Yang heaved a soft sigh. He had thought that these people would have brought something good with them when they came in. Perhaps he could earn an extra fortune from the dead. It was no wonder that Yun Yang was so greedy for money that he would not even let the dead go. He was just too poor right now, so poor that his pockets were even cleaner than his face. It was a pity that the experts from various countries who had perished in the residence of 9 Supremes had some banknotes on them, but they had all turned to dust by now. Despite his disappointment, Yun Yang's trip had not been in vain. There were still some sparkling items on the ground that were worth the price of his return ticket. Yun Yang picked up the sparkling items one by one. He had actually picked up hundreds of mystical stones and dozens of mystical crystals. Just this alone was already a considerable harvest. Besides, there were a few sabers and swords that he could have gotten his hands on as well. They were the personal weapons of these martial artists, and they were definitely not ordinary weapons that could survive the 9 heavens domain's thunder calamity wind. However, Yun Yang did not touch them. Firstly, he already had the divine edge, so other weapons were no longer of interest to him. Secondly, these people had died in the residence of 9 Supremes. If he sold these personal weapons and traded them, it would inevitably reveal something and leave traces. The hall on the other side, however, made Yun Yang overjoyed. The hall was the focus of Yun Yang's trip, the 6 mystical beasts. Yun Yang examined them and found that the highest level of the 6 mystical beasts was 8th level intermediate, while the other 3 were 8th level beginner level. Even the 2 weakest ones were 7th level pinnacle. Of course, what surprised him the most was that the corpses of these mystical beasts were all well preserved. It was not difficult to imagine that the ability of mystical beasts to withstand the natural forces of heaven and earth was much stronger than that of a human being. The clouds of the residence of 9 Supremes had already surrounded them, absorbing the spiritual qi in the air and absorbing it into the clouds. It was fortunate that Yun Yang had come earlier. If he had come any later, the remains of the 2 7th-level pinnacle mystical beasts might not have been able to resist the invasion of the clouds. Yun Yang, who was familiar with the power of the 9 heavens domain, dared not delay. He flashed the divine edge with a swoosh and was about to collect the mystical cores with a single slash. However, before Yun Yang could move, he stopped abruptly. This was because the moment the blade of heavens will appeared, the surrounding clouds suddenly parted in all directions with a glint of the blade's light. Chapter 199. The change was out of Yun Yang's expectation. The clouds of the residence of 9 Supremes dared not approach the divine edge. This saber actually has such an advantage. Yun Yang thought of other aspects immediately. If this saber can be effective on all the objects in this world that are cloud, fog, smoke, and air, those mysterious places that are covered in fog all year round, those mystical lands that are filled with miasma, doesn't it mean that as long as I hold this saber I'll have a bright future? Yun Yang was overjoyed, but the effect of the divine edge on objects in the air still had to be further verified. It was more important for him to collect the remains of the 6 mystical beasts. With the saber in hand, Yun Yang quickly retrieved the mystical cores of the mystical beasts and dried the outer layer with mystical qi. After a simple treatment, the mystical cores that were initially wrapped in the flesh and blood of the mystical beasts were now round and clean. It seemed like Yun Yang was exceptionally familiar with handling such matters, and he was overflowing with enthusiasm. These were all treasures. However, how should he use these mystical cores? Should he give them to Emmy for nourishment? Or should he give them to the 4 noble young masters to auction in exchange for his and Emmy's cultivation resources? In all fairness, of course, it would be better to let the 4 noble young masters auction them. The gains would be greater and it would be beneficial in the long run. However, Yun Yang could feel Emmy moving in his subconscious space. It was twisting and turning, its soft cries filled with pleas for food. Yun Yang knew the pros and cons, but he could not hold himself back and gave half of it to Emmy. Emmy accepted the mystical core with glee and placed it at its roots, burying it in a hole dug with its vines. After a while it was even more delighted. The 2 leaves swayed together as the emerald green vines danced in the air, twisting and turning as they cried out incessantly. It was like a child who had suddenly received delicious food, overjoyed. Although the pauper Yun Yang had given away half of his newly acquired gains in an instant, he felt his heart soften when he felt Emmy's joy. With a chuckle, he returned immediately. There would be a sumptuous banquet later. As long as everything went smoothly, he believed that there would be a large sum of money that would help him escape the title of pauper. Boss is inviting us to gamble? Dong Qianling clutched the letter, his face filled with shock and disbelief. This matter is a little strange. They want us to gamble and we can only win and not lose. Go. Why not? Chun Wanfeng's eyes lit up. I've been bored out of my mind these past few days. Xia Bingchuan, do you really have eggs? Chiu Yun-sen asked, why isn't that old eunuch doing anything? Didn't he promise to give us the luminary paste? What's wrong with this old bastard? Should we tell boss and go directly to the palace to find him? The luminary paste was a big deal. There's also boss's share. Everyone looked askance at him. Dong Qianling raised his voice. Oh, young Master Chiu seems to be in a hurry for the luminary paste. Tiske, I heard that it's good for men. Tiske, young Master Chiu is in such a hurry. Tiske, is it because, Chun Wanfeng, young Master Chiu can't take it anymore. Xia Bingchuan, so young Master Chiu can't make it? Chiu Yun-san was enraged. Who said that? Who said that? All of you stop talking nonsense. We still have to support boss tonight. Tell me, how are we going to win against those guys? How much silver should I bring? Also, do we need a secret code? Dong Qianling guffawed. Chiu Yun-san is changing the topic again. It looks like this fellow really can't take it anymore. Oh my god, young Master Chiu, how old are you? Sigh, I suddenly feel like I'm not classy when I'm with you. Chun Wanfeng chimed in. People say that one takes on the color of one's company. Could it be that those who can't take it anymore? Why don't young Master Chiu stay away from us? Xia Bingchuan agreed. That's right, that's exactly what I'm thinking. Chiu Yun-san was flushed as he shouted angrily, you're the one who can't take it anymore. All of you can't take it anymore. I only wanted to fight for some benefits for everyone. Who would have thought that all of you would be so cunning and shameless? Dong Qianling slapped the table and guffawed. So Chiu Yun-san really can't take it anymore. Chiu Yun-san really can't take it anymore. Dong Qianling's voice was loud and deafening, traveling far and wide. Chiu Yun-san's face turned purple. He rushed up to cover his mouth. Brother, you're my biological brother, all right? Lower your voice. When they arrived at the Towering Wind Pavilion, the 3 great young masters of Chun, Xia, and Dong were still laughing like wash basins. Their hearty laughter could be heard a few streets away. Chiu Yun-san followed behind with his head hung low, his face pale. Shui Wuyin rolled his eyes as he looked at these fellows. He had heard the 3 lunatics' laughter when they were 3 streets away. As the laughter got closer, they had actually entered the Towering Wind Pavilion. They were still laughing after entering the pavilion. Had their laughing acupoints been struck at the same time? This is a casino? The environment here isn't bad at all. Why isn't boss here yet? Shui Wuyin really wanted to roar, F***CKU. What's there to laugh like this? All of you are crazy. It did not take long. Under Yun Yang's lead, a large group of people arrived in a mighty manner. There were more than 60 gamblers from various countries. There were quite a number of generals from various countries who had come this time. Those who stayed in the inn and did not come out were mostly experienced and prudent people. Those that Yun Yang had brought along were basically below 40 years of age. Once they entered the towering wind pavilion, their eyes shone. Starting from 3 feet into the door, the walls on both sides, the floor and the ceiling were filled with forbidden mystical stones. Under many of the gambling tables in the hall, the forbidden mystical stones were densely arranged. Even the edges of the tables were embedded with forbidden mystical stones that were emitting a faint red glow. They were the ultimate grade forbidden mystical stones. Not to mention anything else, just based on the current situation, even a 10th perfection grandmaster would not be able to use Shen Qi to cheat. Even if no one noticed it, the ultimate grade forbidden dark stone would automatically emit a white light warning. What a great place. The bearded officer's eyes shone. I love fair competition the most. This casino has the most forbidden mystical stones I've ever seen. The 4 popinjays stood up at the same time. Wow, boss, long time no see. Yun Yang laughed and introduced them enthusiastically. Once the generals heard the word boss, their expressions darkened for a long time. Were they all this fellow's underlings? They had thought that as long as Yun Yang did not join the game, they could avoid a certain someone's trickery to the greatest extent. However, they were all his underlings, the probability of them playing tricks behind his back was much higher. However, most of the people who looked at Yun Yang's expression were more curious. The 4 young masters of the 4 noble families actually called this fellow boss? What was going on? Many of them could not help but reevaluate Yun Yang. After all, everyone knew how proud and arrogant the young masters of the 4 great clans were. Even if he was an ignorant and incompetent hedonist, his standards were definitely high. How could they call someone boss so easily? Either that, or they were completely subdued. Or they were completely subdued. Or perhaps this person was hiding a shocking profit on him. Other than these few possibilities, there were no other possibilities. No matter what kind of ability Yun Yang possessed, he was a dangerous character that was worthy of people's attention and vigilance. In spite of this, everyone's attention was quickly drawn to the gambling table. No matter how dangerous Yun Yang was, it was something that would happen after today. It would not be too late to think about it in the future. They would gamble today and enjoy themselves to the fullest. The problematic characters would be dealt with tomorrow. Come to the gambling table, we're all brothers. Come, we only recognize gold and silver here. Wow, we recognize treasures of heaven and earth, mystical stones and mystical crystals too. Dong Qianling leaped onto the table and roared, come, what do you all want to play? How about dice? Pai Gao. If you really have a special hobby, there's even a mahjong table over there. F***CK, this casino is of a high class, they have all sorts of gambling devices. Great. Come, just for this young master will be the banker first. Come. Spear of Dragon Emperor Dong. Ka. Everyone turned to look at him when they heard him. Could this young master of the Dong family be an impostor? The legendary young master of a noble family was actually purple? In spite of this, everyone was really here to play today. It was proper for them to observe the situation first. They were all experienced gamblers. After one round they could basically tell whether someone was cheating or not. Obviously, Dong Qianling and even the 4 noble young masters were all sheep. At least they were not the type to cheat. Everyone swarmed forward at once. The 4 noble young masters were the bankers on their own tables for the time being, chasing the original bankers away. Instantly they shouted and cheered as gold, silver, and banknotes flew everywhere. The dozen or so people went to another table to play mahjong quietly. Was this something that needed to be discussed? Shui Wuyin greeted them calmly, pacing around each table with his hands behind his back, a faint smile on his face. Seeing that everyone was already having a great time, it's so crowded today, so many unfamiliar faces. How about I join in? A voice came quietly from the door. A person dressed in white suddenly appeared in the casino, not a speck of dust on him. Yun Yang frowned and glanced at Shui Wuyin. Shui Wuyin was surprised as well. The casino had been closed immediately after the group of sheep had entered. How did this person come in? Shui Wuin's expression did not waver as he asked with a smile, "Friend, what is your name?" The person dressed in white replied coldly, "Friend? I dare not. I'm only a gambler. Since you've opened your doors to do business, Surely you wouldn't reject a guest who's here to support you? Shui Wuin's smile grew gentler, his tone gentler as he said softly, there are friends everywhere. Since you've come to this place, you're my esteemed guest. What does it matter how you address me? The person dressed in white's face looked like it was covered in a layer of frost as he said, I'll say it again. I'm not your friend, you're not my friend either. Yunyang observed this uninvited guest from the side, feeling that the person dressed in white was actually rather familiar. However, he had never seen this person's face before. Hold on. Yunyang's thoughts cleared up as he recalled the white silhouette that First Court King Qingguang had been pursuing relentlessly that night. Chapter 200. Thinking of this, Yunyang's heart skipped a beat. He took a step forward and laughed. A casino, a casino. Of course, gamblers are welcomed the most. Since this brother wants to play, the host will welcome you with open arms. As he spoke, he shot a glance at Shui Wuin, seemingly unintentionally. Shui Wuin understood and said, what would this brother like to play? Do you have a preferred method of gambling? From Yunyang's sudden intervention, especially the ambiguous glance, Shui Wuin immediately realized that this person before him might have an extraordinary background. At the very least, he would not be a simple character. What kind of person could make Supreme Cloud think that he was not a simple character? Let's play dice. Victory and defeat are clear and immediate. The man in white was unmoved, but he said coldly, there's something I have to say first. I only have 50 silver taels with me. 50 silver taels. The man in white's abrupt words enlightened Yunyang instead. He said leisurely, 8,000 gold taels isn't too much, nor is a single copper coin too little. If there's a bet, there's no loss. Boss Shui, bring this brother to Chiu Yunsan's table. I wish this brother good luck and a fruitful return. At the table, Chiu Yunsan was the banker, shouting and yelling, his face flushed with excitement. He guffawed from time to time while a group of generals cursed and scolded him. Young Master Chiu must have won quite a lot and was in high spirits. Shui Wuin brought the man in white over and spoke directly, Young Master Chiu, this is Boss Yun's friend. He's here to play a few rounds. Chiu Yunsan guffawed. Tell boss not to worry. Boss's friend is my Chiu Yunsan's blood brother. Shui Wuin nodded and turned to leave without another word. Although the time they had spent together was short and they had not even had the chance to speak, Shui Wuin was someone like him. He could already tell that to Chiu Yunsan and the rest, his words were nothing more than bullsh*t. Only by using Yunyang's name could the matter be settled smoothly. Yunyang and Shui Wuin separated, going back and forth to check on the results. Both of them were the only two people in the gambling hall who had not joined in. After a long while, the gambling table supported by Dong Qianling became extremely noisy. The continuous shouts were so loud that they almost lifted the roof off the building. But he heard dozens of people shouting themselves hoarse, little, small, F*ck his guji. Dong Qianling, who was the banker on the other hand, yelled angrily, spouting obscenities, F*king hell, a bunch of bastards actually managed to win your father's money. F*ck. The generals did not show any signs of weakness. Bullshit. We're at the gambling table now. Even if it's the emperor's money, we dare to win. Damn it, hurry up and open it. If you don't have enough money to be the banker, then get out of here and let me do it. Dong Qianling cried, not enough capital? Today I will make sure all of you lose so badly that you will take off your pants and walk out. I'm so angry, so angry. Yunyang shouted from the periphery, Dong Qianling, I'm telling you, if there's even one of these fellows who walks out with his pants on, you better F*king go home with me. The mission I'm giving you, the price is clearly stated. You have to win them all, not even a pair of underwear is allowed. Dong Qianling howled, don't worry boss, I'll F*ck them to death. The generals chortled as well. How dare you boast so shamelessly when you're alone? Watch us brothers take turns to kill you. Again. Young Master Chiu slammed a bunch of banknotes on the table, his face flushed. Your father doesn't have anything else but money. There were at least 40 to 50 banknotes in the thick stack of banknotes, and the lowest denomination on top was 10,000 taels. Once such a large sum of money was revealed, a new wave of excitement was ignited. Amidst the strange cries, the gambling began once again. Yunyang and Shui Wuin walked around and saw that these fellows were gambling themselves hoarse and were extremely engrossed. They walked to the side and gathered together. How is it? Yunyang asked. The man in white only watches and doesn't gamble. He has watched more than a dozen rounds up until now but has yet to make a move. Shui Wuyin said, this person either has an ulterior motive or he's a veteran. I'm leaning towards the latter. Yun Yang did not ask clearly, but Shui Wuyin knew who he was asking about and what he was asking about. Why do you have such a judgment? Yun Yang asked. I believe that Supreme Cloud can tell that this person is an expert. Shui Wuin's eyes glinted with a sharp glint. The aura I feel in front of him is as majestic as a mountain, and this mountain is an iceberg, a bone-chilling iceberg. This person's cultivation base can be said to be higher than anyone I've ever seen. Shui Wuin's voice was hoarse as he spoke slowly but in an exceptionally serious tone. Although this gamble of ours has been premeditated, the date has yet to be determined. It can still be attributed to chance. It would be too far-fetched to say that such an expert has come with a purpose. That's why I'm leaning towards this person coming in to try his luck, because he's short of money. After all, our Towering Wind Pavilion's reputation is rather good. As long as he wins with real ability, he can take any amount of money with him. Logically speaking, there's no reason for an expert like this to be short of money. Even if he was short of money, he would have a channel to earn it. However, there are only two possibilities for him to come here. Either he doesn't have a channel to obtain supplies here, or he simply likes to gamble. He's chosen to earn money through gambling, a risky method, and isn't willing to use other methods. This person should be a more principled person. Shui Wuyin said, such a person would usually be well prepared and would never allow himself to fall into such a predicament. Therefore he must have his difficulties. Such difficulties? Other than a powerful enemy, there's hardly anything else that could force such a person to such a state. Shui Wuin's voice was slow. After each sentence, he would ponder for a while before speaking slowly. Finally he concluded, if I'm not wrong, this person must have a formidable enemy in Tiantang City that he can't fight against. This formidable enemy might even be a formidable character that he can't defend against. Once they meet, it'll be difficult for him to even escape. Pure admiration flowed from Yun Yang's eyes. Eighth brother was right. Shui Wuin's mind was truly remarkable. Based on the fact that the other party had come in to gamble, he was able to deduce the truth of the matter. It was more than rare. If Yun Yang had not seen this man in white being hunted down by First Court King Qingguang, he might not have been able to deduce to this extent. On the other hand, it was because Yun Yang knew the background of the man in white that he knew that Shui Wuin's deduction was not wrong at all. It was not difficult for him to take advantage of the situation. Since he wants to win, let him lose. However, 50 silver taels is too little. Yun Yang said in a low voice with a smile. Shui Wuin understood tacitly and said in a low voice as well, I'll go take a look then. He then left with a sleeve of his arms. Yun Yang smiled faintly and stood where he was, waiting for the good news. In this casino there must be a large amount of forbidden mystical stone, genuine and genuine. Even if a pinnacle expert were to come and use mystical chi, it would be impossible to be completely silent and flawless. This understanding was absolutely correct, and it was what all the gamblers were most at ease about. However, having the forbidden mystical stone did not mean that there was no way to cheat. At least, in this realm, there was still one person who could resort to underhanded tricks. Shui Wuin. Under the premise that all the cultivators in the continent cultivated mystical chi, Shui Wuin, as a mysterious member of the Ling clan, cultivated the Ling clan's cultivation method. He could use the power of his soul to intervene and achieve the goal of changing the final outcome of the game without a trace. This should be the main reason why Eighth Brother made Towering Wind Pavilion into a casino and not some other business. Yun Yang despised his eighth brother inwardly. This fellow's plan from the beginning was to cheat others. With such an undetectable cheating presence, it's hard not to profit from opening a casino. On the other side, the man in white had watched 20 to 30 rounds and seemed to have finally made up his mind. The moment he saw Chiu Yun-san put down the dice cup, he placed 50 silver taels on 7 without hesitation. Single bet. Single bet was a relatively rare betting method for dice gambling. 3 dice would roll a maximum of 18 points, and the minimum would be 3 points. There were a total of 16 single bet options, so once the bet was made, the odds would increase tenfold. If he had bet on 7 points, Chiu Yun-san would have to pay 500 silver taels. A tenfold return. However, no matter how high the odds were, there was only a 1 in 16 chance. How could it be easy to bet on it? The people around were all surprised. Was there really such a game? Was he really so confident? Or was he desperate to lose? Had he not gone crazy from wanting to get rich? Shui Wuin stood outside the crowd, watching with his arms folded. Chiu Yun-san opened the dice cup amidst his guffaws, only to see 3 dice inside. One was 2 points, one was 1, and one was 4 points. The total number of the 3 dice was actually 7, F***ck me. It's really 7 points? Chiu Yun-san craned his neck, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. Am I seeing a ghost? Chiu Yun-san cursed, but his hand did not hesitate, pushing 500 silver taels to the man in white. Although it was a 10-fold return, the man in white's starting bet was too little. It was only 50 silver taels, a meager sum. The people around him couldn't help but sigh at how good this person's luck was. How could such great luck fall on his head alone? They also lamented that they didn't place a few thousand or 10,000 taels of silver on 7 points. Otherwise they would have struck it rich too. The man in white, on the other hand, stood tall, his expression indifferent. It was clear that he had expected this outcome, and it was completely within his expectations. Chapter 201. Following that, the man in white no longer placed single bets but blended into the crowd and switched to betting on big or small. However, he won every single one of his 4 bets. His initial 500 taels turned into 4,000 taels. All the generals were veterans in the casino. How could they not know that this person was truly an expert in gambling? At least he was highly accomplished in listening to the dice. They all hoped that he would keep up the good work and win a few more bets. Many of them were secretly delighted that they had seen through this person's prowess earlier. They had followed the crowd and won a lot just now. The opportunity to make a fortune had fallen from the sky. Once the man in white's valiant achievement was announced, the generals from the other tables came as well. They swarmed over like sharks that had smelled fresh blood. Just as everyone was staring at the man in white, waiting for him to place his bets so that they could follow the crowd and make a fortune, the man in white casually kept the banknotes and returned to his spectator mode. A Dongxian general beside the man in white could not help urging him when he saw that the man in white was not placing his bets. Brother, place your bets quickly. We're all waiting for you. The man in white's gaze froze, but he did not reply. It was as if he really had no intention of placing his bets, completely ignoring the attention around him. As far as the man in white was concerned, he already had 4,000 taels of silver. He only needed to observe for a while longer, concentrate his energy, listen out the exact numbers and place a single bet. Then he would be able to obtain 40,000 taels of silver. With this 40,000 taels, it would be enough for his expenses for the time being. One should not be too greedy. In any case, with the existence of this casino, he could always come back if he ran out of money. The situation today was very strange. The men around him were all tall and sturdy, and they all had a boundless murderous aura around them. He was afraid that they were all from the military and were definitely not ordinary people. If he really got entangled by this group of people, although he was not afraid, it would still be troublesome. The man in white's gaze was focused. Almost no one noticed that his ears were trembling slightly. Chiu Yun-san, who had lost 4 rounds in a row, held the dice cup in his hand and spun it up and down, left and right. Suddenly, the dice cup flew into the air and slapped the table in a practiced manner as he guffawed. Place your bets, place your bets. Don't you dare to place your bets now that there's no beacon? Place your order. Ka. Seeing that the man in white really did not place his bets and hearing Chiu Yun-san's clamor, the generals could not help but squeal as they waved their banknotes and slammed them on the table. The man in white hesitated for a moment, then pushed all the silver notes in his hand into an empty space. It was a single bet again. But this time, everyone's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They looked at the man in white as if they were looking at an immortal. Because the white-robed man's single bet this time was shockingly 18 points. This white-clothed man was actually suppressing the ancestor of 6666, leopard. The ancestor of 18 points, the leopard, was a single bet, but it was different from the usual points. It was a unique point and the probability of it appearing was less than 1 in a million. Therefore, the odds of a single bet had to be multiplied by 10. In other words, once the bet was made, the odds would be 100 times. If the leopard really appeared this time, Chiu Yun-san would have to pay 400,000 taels just for the man in white alone. It was such a huge bet. The man in white felt extremely helpless about this. In all honesty, he only wanted to win 40,000 taels. However, he had clearly heard that this Chiu Yun-san fellow had pulled out all the tricks in this round. He had really shaken out a leopard. Since the other party had gotten it and he had heard it too, then, it was obvious that 400,000 taels had been delivered to him. How could he not accept it? The corner of Chiu Yun-san's mouth twitched. Is this really boss's friend? This friend is a little ruthless. Reaching out to flip the dice cup, his palm was actually trembling. Finally, with a roar, he lifted the dice cup. If I lose, I lose. It's Chiu Yun-san's virtue to admit defeat when I'm willing to bet. The dice cup was lifted. Everyone looked down and saw 3 dice lying quietly on the ground. One was 6 points, another was 6 points, and the last one was 5 points. 17 points. Wrong bet. The other generals were more concerned about winning or losing. After a momentary pause, they started making a ruckus again. F***CK. I lost again. I've won. I've won this round. The man in white's gaze froze, staring at the shining 17 points on the table. He did not move his gaze away for a long time. What was going on? Chiu Yun-san was definitely not playing any tricks. This was something he could be absolutely sure of. Before the dice were revealed, the number below was definitely 18 points. However, why was it 17 points after the dice were revealed? Outside the crowd, Shui Wuyin wore a faint smile as he left, checking the tables one by one. The man in white looked at the 17 points on the table quietly, watching Chiu Yun-san laugh as he swept away the banknotes. Then he turned and left without any expression. Yun-yang was already at the door. He had even taken an armchair and was sitting comfortably with his legs crossed, swaying from side to side. Seeing the man in white walking over, he asked in surprise, "What? Not playing anymore? Not going to play a few more rounds?" The man in white's expression was ugly. With a snort he walked out. Yun-yang chuckled. Lost? Lost everything? This fellow was annoying. The man in white frowned. He almost could not suppress his anger. If it had only been the 50 taels from the start, it would have been fine if he had lost. However, after some twists and turns, it had reached 4,000 taels. That was a huge sum of money. It was all gone in one go. He had lost 4,000 taels of silver, not 50. Looking at the man in white's gloomy expression, Yun-yang chuckled inwardly. This was Shui Wuyin's tactic. He would let you win first, win to a certain extent, then let you lose everything in one go. The agony would be pushed to the extreme. His boss had said that losing 50 taels was too little. Then he would let him win more first and clean it all up in one go. It's only 50 silver taels. So be it if you've lost. It's not worth it. Yun-yang smiled amicably. You're welcome to come again. The man in white snorted, wanting to ignore him and walk out. However, he could not help retorting, I've lost 4,000 taels. Yun-yang chuckled. How could there be 4,000 taels? You admitted that you only had 50 taels then. Even if you've won 4,000 taels in the process, the 3,950 taels are only chips. They don't truly belong to you. It's good that you didn't lose the bet, but a bet is a bet. What you took away in the end is yours. What you brought in the beginning is also the one that lost. The man in white's face turned green, but he was speechless. Leaving after losing? What a good gambler. Still, you can't help feeling a little disappointed. Sigh, 50 shiny taels of silver are gone just like that. Sigh, 50 taels of silver as a base and all the way up to 4,000 taels of silver. Just like that, I can imagine how upset I feel. Sigh, there's nothing I can do about it. Who doesn't want to win when they're here to gamble? Let it go, this is life, life. Yun-yang comforted the man in white incessantly, but the man's expression grew darker the more he listened. Finally, he stopped and turned to look at Yun-yang, saying in a low voice, "Shut up." Yun-yang's eyes widened. What? I say, didn't you just lose 50 silver taels? Do you have to be so anxious? I tried to comfort you out of goodwill, but you're still throwing a tantrum at me. My goodwill has gone to waste. That's the last 50 silver taels I have with me. The man in white said in a low voice, I don't wish for anyone to use this against me. The last 50 silver taels? Yun-yang nodded. This is indeed worthy of sympathy. Still, are you leaving just like that? Do you need me to lend you some silver taels? To recoup your losses? The man in white's eyes shone. You can lend it to me? Yun-yang said, helping others is helping yourself. But you must have something as collateral. Of course, I'll need to pay interest when I borrow silver taels. The man in white took out a jade pendant. How about this? Sure. Yun-yang took it and studied it carefully, weighing it in his hand. He said in a low voice, I don't know the value of this jade pendant, but it's not a problem to pawn it for 3,000 silver taels. 3,000 silver taels? The man in white sucked in a deep breath. This is the heart of the sea jade. Yun-yang rolled his eyes. Just tell me if you can lend it to me or not. Yes. The man in white swallowed his anger, almost suffocating to death. However, he had no silver taels on him and had lost his last 50 silver taels. If he really did not lend it to him, what should he do next? Did he really have to steal, rob, or do something so despicable? With these 3,000 silver taels, there was at least a chance to recoup his losses. So what if the interest was high? Who did not know that borrowing money from a casino had a high interest rate? But that was for ordinary people. Did he think that he was a fool who did not know how to gamble? Taking the 3,000 silver taels, the man in white snorted and glanced at Yun Yang from the corner of his eyes. You're not allowed to leave. I've remembered you. Once I win, I'll redeem this jade pendant immediately. That's not a problem at all. Yun Yang was beaming. I wish you victory and a killing spree here and now. Right, there's one more thing I need to make clear. If you return me 3,000 silver taels within an hour, the jade pendant will still be yours. However, if it's past an hour, you'll need 3,500 silver taels to clear your debt. What a scoundrel. He dared to ask for 1/6 of the mother gold's interest within an hour. How could this be considered a loan shark? This was robbery. No, it was even more vicious than robbery. The man in white snorted and walked in. He didn't even try to bargain. Obviously, he was very confident in himself. Half a quarter of an hour later, the man in white walked to Yun Yang with exasperation. The veins on his face were bulging and his temples were throbbing. You've recouped your losses so quickly. Brother, you're in luck this time. Yun Yang asked despite knowing the answer. The man in white was already in a bad mood. Hearing Yun Yang's words, his expression darkened. Have you lost? Yun Yang looked at the man in white in shock and disbelief, saying, How did you lose so quickly? It's only been half a quarter of an hour. We agreed on an hour just now. You don't have to be so anxious. Chapter 202. What good stuff do you have? Take it out for a look? As long as I like it, it's not a problem to pawn it, Yun Yang said. A quarter of an hour later, the man in white's expression darkened. I still have a piece of stellar steel here. 10,000 silver taels should be no problem, right? No problem. An hour later, the man in white stood in front of Yun Yang, gritting his teeth. I'm not gambling anymore. What the F***CK? That's more than 30,000 silver taels. Boss, you've lost it all in less than 2 hours. I finally know why you lost 4,000 silver taels in one go. Yun Yang shook his head and sighed, speaking earnestly, I advise you not to gamble anymore. You're too focused on your gains and losses. You're not suited for gambling at all. A small gamble is good for the mood, but a large one is harmful to the body. The man in white kept quiet, the muscles on his cheeks twitching. Farewell. He walked out step by step, each step seeming to carry the weight of 1,000 caddies. I say, if you're still unwilling to give up, I can pawn your sword as well. Yun Yang sighed slowly. Still, you should leave? You want my sword? The man in white's right hand gripped the hilt, veins popping out. How is that what I want? It's not that I'm giving you another chance to win back your losses because you're unwilling to accept your loss. Forget it, forget it. You'd better leave quickly. Yun Yang shook his head. I don't want to hurt you. The man in white had already made up his mind, striding back. I'll pawn it to you. Yun Yang's eyes widened. Brother, I was only joking with you just now. It's my fault for finding something to say. If you lose, this sword of yours will really be gone. I know what a martial artist's accompanying sword represents. Listen to my advice, don't gamble anymore. Gambling is like a pit. It's easy to get in, but it's not so easy to climb out. The man in white said coldly, say no more. I'm only asking you, do you accept it or not? Yun Yang replied, of course I do. Brother, your sword looks extraordinary. I'm willing to pay 20,000 silver taels as a pawn. I can redeem it any time. What do you think? The white-robed man's face turned green. What did you say? This sword of mine can't be bought even with 100,000 profound stones, and you're giving me 20,000 taels of silver as collateral? Yun Yang pursed his lips and said, your sword is worth 100,000 mystical stones just because you say it's worth 100,000 mystical stones? Even if he sold the entire casino, it would probably be around this amount, right? You think his sword is worth it? Why don't you just rob someone? You're the one who needs my help right now, okay? Let alone 20,000 even if it's, all right. Yun Yang said helplessly, how about this? I can appraise your sword for 100,000 silver taels, but I can only give you 20,000 each time. And only 4 times. On the 5th time, although I'll still give you 20,000 taels of silver, you're not allowed to gamble anymore. You can just take the 20,000 taels of silver and leave. This way, you'll be able to live for a period of time and you'll have a chance to make a comeback. If you agree, we'll do it this way. If you don't, you can just take your sword and leave. The white-robed man's face darkened. He clearly knew that the fellow in front of him was leading him step by step into the abyss, but he still had to say, "Thank you." This feeling was King disgusting. I've only pawned 100,000 silver taels of a sword that's worth tens of millions of silver taels, and I've only been given a base of 20,000 taels of silver. Now that I've arrived, I still have to say thank you. The white-robed man entered the casino once again with an emotion that even he himself found unbelievable. A moment later. "Give me another 20,000. Another moment. Give me another 20,000. Another moment. Give me another 20,000. About a quarter of an hour later. The man in white stood in front of Yun-Yang in a daze, his face drained of color and bewilderment. He could clearly hear the number of points. There was absolutely no mistake about this, and there was no room for doubt. The number that was shaken was the number that he had heard. Throughout the entire process, no one had used mystical chi to play any tricks. If someone had really played a trick, he would have been able to sense it, even if it was someone at Ling Xiaozui's level. Even if he could not sense it once or twice, he would not have made such a mistake after so many times. Yet why did he keep losing? He kept losing with a single push. No matter how confident he was, he kept losing. He kept losing all the way to the end, to the very end, to the very end. When he came, he was poor as well, but he still had 50 silver taels with him. But now, in less than 2 hours, not only had he pawned all his belongings, jade pendants and rare metals, he still owed a huge debt of 200,000 taels of silver. Even his sword had fallen into someone else's hands. Not to mention that the debt he owed was still generating interest in an unimaginable way. Not to mention, if he were to come here at this time tomorrow, the 200,000 silver taels of debt would rise to at least 250,000. In just half a month's time, it would be absolutely impossible for him to redeem all his belongings. Due to the compounding interest, the total debt by then would be an astronomical figure that he would not be able to repay even if he were to go bankrupt for 10 lifetimes. Lost again? Yun-Yang looked at the white-robed man sympathetically. "Your luck, really? Why don't you take these 20,000 silver taels and leave? Come back tomorrow to try your luck? It looks like it's not a good time to gamble today. There's no hope for you to recoup your losses." The white-robed man was taken aback. "Come back tomorrow? Come back tomorrow?" Suddenly, the white-robed man looked at the gambling tables that were in the midst of a racket, and a sense of fear rose within him out of nowhere. He felt that these gambling tables were like a giant mouth. Once he got close, it would swallow him whole, skin and bones. The white-robed man clutched the 20,000 silver taels in his hand, only feeling bitterness in his mouth. At this moment he hated King Qingguang to the core. He had never hated this fellow as much as he did now. He was living a good life, roaming the world and laughing proudly in the martial world. Who could do anything to him? Yet this bastard had accepted someone's commission and started to hunt him down. He had run 30,000 miles, chasing him all the way. He had chased him from Yutong's border to Diyuan, then from Diyuan to the grassland. Yet he did not stop, chasing him all the way to Tiantang City. He had finally managed to shake off his pursuer for the time being, but he had realized miserably that he was only left with 50 silver taels out of the hundreds of thousands of silver taels he had brought with him to buy medicine, pills, information and treatment. He had come here to try his luck, to ease the pressure on his silver taels, but more importantly, he wanted to use the pleasure of winning to dispel the frustration he had been feeling all this while. How could he have any more expectations for a gamble like this that had already been decided? How could he have known that the outcome of this gamble was not within his expectations? The result of this gamble was only to pile up his debt. How could the white-robed man not blame First Court King Qingguang? "If you hadn't chased me, would I have come here? If you hadn't chased me, would I have run out of money? If you hadn't chased me, would I have been forced to gamble? If you hadn't chased me, would I have ended up like this? Even my sword has become someone else's? And I'm in a huge debt? A debt that I might not be able to clear in my entire life. First Court King Qingguang, you and I are irreconcilable. Absolutely irreconcilable." The white-clothed man gritted his teeth and cursed in a low voice. Looking at the white-robed man walking out with a pale face, Yun-Yang called out to him, "Brother?" The white-robed man turned to see Yun-Yang's sincere smile. "Is there anything else?" Yun-Yang held up his sword with both hands. "I'll lend this sword to you for now. It's necessary for a cultivator to have a sword by his side. It'll be a pity if I don't have a suitable weapon. I was only joking with you earlier." The white-robed man felt a sudden surge of emotion. He was touched. Why? His gaze towards Yun-yang was filled with longing, but he did not extend his hand to take the sword, even though his gaze was already brimming with longing. Only with one's weapon is a martial artist's life. Yun-yang said faintly, "You've borrowed money from me and lost it to my casino. From a certain perspective, I don't have any losses. I won't use your sword anyway. No matter how valuable your sword is, it won't be reflected in my hands. Let's just treat it as making a friend. Since you're short of silver coins, I'll sponsor you. Consider it a form of goodwill. We're all martial artists. Who knows who'll need who in the future?" Yun-yang said warmly, "Who knows, I might need your help in the future. Take it." The white-robed man looked at him meaningfully and said, "If so, thank you." He received his sword rather excitedly and said, "Young master, I owe you a favor today. If there's a chance in the future, I can promise you to do something for you." He said seriously, "This is my promise." When he said this, his heart was filled with gratitude. "Do something for me?" Yun-yang smiled. "What is it?" The white-robed man said seriously, "It can be anything." Yun-yang clapped his hands and said, "Anything? That's great. Since it can be anything, there's no need to wait for the future. I happen to need someone's help with something right now." The man in white stared at Yun-yang in bewilderment, overwhelmed by both joy and sorrow. He could vaguely feel that he had yet to jump out of a pit completely, but he had already turned around and jumped into another, bigger pit without any hesitation at all. However, words were spoken. He could not go back on his word at this juncture. The white-robed man gripped his sword tightly, actually feeling that the treasured sword that had followed him for so many years was burning his hand. He asked with a dark expression, "What is it? You weren't just going to talk about it just now, were you? All right, I won't ask for your help for free. As long as you're done with this, not only your sword, but all the debts here will all be written off. Percent, begging for monthly votes. Brothers and sisters, for my sake, give me a few monthly votes." Chapter 203. Yun-yang smiled warmly. "Actually, I believe it's not difficult for you to help me with this matter. Other than that, I can help you with other matters as well. Come find me when you're done and we'll discuss it in detail. I don't need your help with anything else." The man in white was almost grinding his teeth. "From the moment the matter is settled, we'll be strangers. We'll go our separate ways and mind our own business. We'll have nothing to do with each other. It's a promise? A promise is a promise. Speak. It's actually very simple. You just need to do this and that." After the white-clothed man heard this, a surprised look appeared in his eyes. "But your ultimate goal is only that. How precious is my promise? You're only asking me to kill one person?" Yun-yang smiled warmly. "You heard right. This was not going to be an easy task. Of course that's for me." The man in white wore a disdainful expression. "What's so difficult about killing one person? I still have to remind you. If you expose me in the process of doing this, then this matter won't be settled." Yun-yang reminded him kindly, "This is a friendly reminder. No matter when or what the situation is, as long as you're exposed, your debt, whether it's this sword or these items, will still be mine." The man in white could only feel his anger rising. "It's only natural." Yun-yang took out the jade pendants and various metals and placed them on the table. "Please," just as he uttered the word please, Yun-yang stopped abruptly. Although these jade pendants and strange metals still looked the same, Yun-yang could clearly feel that at least 95% of the spiritual qi contained within them had disappeared. Yun-yang felt his teeth clench. He had only kept them in his embrace for such a short period of time and they had already been eaten by Emmy. However, the man in white was obviously enraged. Without even looking at them, he swept all the items into his embrace and said, "We don't owe each other anything from now on. Farewell." Yun-yang heaved a sigh of relief. "Whatever you say. We don't owe each other anything. Remember what you've said." The man in white said angrily, "How can I, Bai Shue, be someone who goes back on my word?" Before he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Yun-yang heaved a long sigh of relief. My God, that was close. According to Yun-yang's judgment, the level of this man in white was at least higher than the Dragon of Clouds, Liang Yunqi, whom he had met a few days ago. If this man was enraged and confronted him directly, he would be in deep trouble. Emmy? Yun-yang entered the deific consciousness space with a dark expression. Emmy obviously knew that it had gotten into trouble. Its tender tendrils coiled around Yun-yang, acting coquettishly. The tip of the tendrils coiled around Yun-yang's body to please him and actually burrowed into Yun-yang's armpit. It was like a little daughter who knew that she had done something wrong and was trying her best to please her father, acting coquettishly, and being obedient. All in all, it was using all sorts of methods to get into the fray. I've lost to you. Yun Yang felt a wave of numbness, the anger within him drifting away as he warned weakly, don't do this anymore in the future, understand? Be good. Aya, Emmy waved its tendrils and rubbed them against Yun Yang's body and face intimately. Emmy, how many more do I need before I can advance another level? Aya, dozens of people? So few. Aya, Yun Yang could only feel himself exiting the space filled with tenderness, a smile on his face and a sense of relief. It was then that he realized that he, who had been filled with rage earlier, did not even have the chance to unleash it. Emmy's extinguishing method was indeed superb. Now that the incident caused by the man in white had come to an end, Yun Yang naturally shifted his attention back to the gambling table. Compared to the sudden appearance of the man in white, the generals of various countries were the real target today. However, Yun Yang was no longer interested in the wager here. No, perhaps it should be said that Yun Yang had never thought much of the chips and banknotes that the generals of various countries possessed. They were all prey that had entered his pocket. It was just a matter of time before they were hunted down. After a while, a certain someone shot Shui Wuyin a meaningful glance. Shui Wuyin nodded slightly without batting an eyelid. Then, the gambling skills and character of the four noble young masters exploded at the same time, as if they had been meticulously calculated. Basically, they won more than they lost at every wager. Large amounts of silver coins flowed into their pockets like the tide, leaving the generals of various countries wailing and complaining incessantly. Now do you know how powerful I am? This brother is just that amazing. Dong Qinling had long forgotten himself as he won consecutively. Brats, remember this, all of you. From now on, this brother is the top gambling god of Tianshan continent. Don't call me Dong Tianling or young Master Dong anymore. Please call me by my nickname Dong Lianing. Who the F***ck are you calling a brat? The generals of the military were initially enraged by their losses, their pockets dry as if they had encountered a drought. Now that they heard such an indiscriminate barrage of insults, it was like 10 years of drought encountering hailstones. How could they hold themselves back now? They immediately retorted. Dong Qianling chuckled. Whoever retorts is a brat. So many people have a reaction. That makes it even simpler. Everyone here is a brat, a piece of trash. Beat this bastard up. The crowd who had lost were enraged as they swarmed forward to attack. The four noble young masters did not show any signs of weakness as they went up to meet them. Come on. The fight was so intense that the sun and moon seemed to have lost their shine. While the four noble young masters were all bruised and swollen, the generals of various countries were also in a mess. Everyone knew that this was a battle between gamblers. No one really wanted to kill each other. After all, they knew each other's background. If they really hurt each other, there would be a lot of trouble in the future. Therefore, everyone was more restrained in their attacks, very restrained. However, no matter how restrained they were, the towering Wind Pavilion's casino was already in ruins. Even if everyone did not unleash their true strength, the repercussions were enough to destroy the casino, leaving it no longer in its original state. The result was not too surprising, but what happened next was far beyond everyone's expectations. Perhaps, it should be said that what happened next had everyone dumbfounded. With a loud bang, a group of people rushed into the casino, the swords and spears in their hands glinted coldly as they exuded a murderous aura. Don't move. It was the city guards. Shui Wuyin broke out in a cold sweat. We're just joking with our own people here. It's fine. However, this group of city guards refused to listen to his explanation and directly ordered, tie up everyone and bring them back for interrogation. While the generals were still in a state of shock, the city guards had already charged forward like a pack of wolves. With a dozen of them against one, the other party had to be cautious and did not dare to go all out. Naturally, the situation was one-sided. Very soon, all the troublemakers, including the four noble young masters and the generals from various countries, were tied up like rice dumplings and escorted out in a grandiose manner. Where's Yun Yang? Where's young Master Yun? The generals who were escorted out had only just regained their senses, but great young Master Yun, who had been at the door just a moment ago, was long gone. Yun Yang sprinted all the way back to the tower to heaven in one breath. He pushed the door open with a loud bang, scaring the old generals who were discussing inside. What happened? This is bad. No. This is bad. Yun Yang was panting heavily as he said breathlessly, A few generals gambled in the casino and got into a fight because they lost too much. The commotion was too big, so the city guards were dispatched and captured all of them. Silence. There was a deathly silence. Everyone's eyeballs were almost popping out of their sockets as they looked at Yunyang, digesting the earth-shattering news that Yunyang had brought. No one dared to believe the description that their ears had just heard. So many people have been captured by the city guards? The empire of Zio's old marshal's beard was trembling. Since when did the city guards start to care about such trivial matters? Yunyang patted his buttocks anxiously. Everyone, please think of something quickly. Save them. This is terrible. Amidst the shock, Han Sanhe regained his composure and looked at Yunyang with a smile. Young Master Yun, you brought them out and watched them be captured? Is this how you treat your guests? Or perhaps this is how the Empire of Yutong treats its guests? Yunyang cried out, feeling wronged. Old Marshal Han, can you not simply accuse others? What does this have to do with me? The cause of this is them causing trouble, alright? It's only right for the city guards to capture people. Not to mention the fact that I don't have an official position, even if I'm a popinjay. Even if I were a high official in the imperial court, I can't bury my conscience and forcefully stop others from enforcing the law, can I? His words were beautifully spoken, open and righteous. Not only did he keep himself out of the matter perfectly, he did not forget to elevate himself and show off the righteousness of Yutong's officials at the same time. This was simply F***ck. This fellow is being treated the same way as everyone else. He's saying everything he wants. The old generals and soldiers cursed in their hearts. This bastard. When nothing happened, he patted his chest as if he was the most capable person in the world and could do anything. As long as he was around, nothing would happen. But once something happened, he would say, I'm just a foppish young master. Pushing everything aside, nothing would work. F***ck. Everyone knew that the root cause of this incident was definitely Yunyang's doing. Only this immoral fellow could have done something like this. To actually invite someone to prison? There was really no one who could do such a thing. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.